and welcome to the Scratticus Academy. We are back with the finale week, and it's gone so fast. I can't quite believe it's here yet. I'm still in denial. Otherwise, please check out the links that are coming up in chat now. This includes our Discord. Please go check that out. There is a chat room purely for this game, and we'd love to hear what you think about it. If you have any favorite bits. Also, if you've missed any, head over to YouTube. We have playlists for each individual game, so you can either binge watch them, or you can just catch up or see anything you have missed out on. Otherwise, a huge thank you to our wonderful sponsors who we could not do this without, including the Deck of Many. Go and check out their Humblewood book that comes out next month because it's gorgeous and I'm obsessed with it. And Scrat has it in the other room, so I can't show you.
You have your copy already?
It's signed. It's so pretty. We got it like a couple of months ago. I'll show you later. It's so pretty. Go check it out. Also, Mage Hand Press. You can see me run the finale using Mage Hand Press's Dark Matter in Argo 37 tomorrow. It's basically D&D in space, which is what everyone needs in their life. So otherwise, without further ado, I will hand back over to Rachel. Oh, hi.
Oh, hi. Thank you very much, Alice. So today is the season finale of Tale of Redwall and a Tale of our Redwall heroes. So before we jump into, I'm sure it will be a totally relaxed session for both players and GM. Let's go around the table, introduce yourselves, let us know who you're playing, and we'll start with Alice. Why not?
Oh, hi. I'm Alice. I'm also White Rabbit Pick on Twitter. You can find me DMing or playing on this channel. I also have a Patreon, so please go check that out. I actually remembered. Hans isn't here to remind me. Otherwise, I play Hulk Bartuk, who is your big, kindly otter friend. And he's very happy now that his memories are pretty much back, and he's back with his family, even though he's been scolded by his younger sister.
All right. Next around the table, the wonderful, incomparable Gruber.
Hello, it's Heavenly. That is my real name on Twitter. That THT. That I play Grouper, who is a bit of a Rambo character. He is a really great tracker. He's always led them in the right direction 100% of the time that he's been trying to do that. And he's so excited for battle. He is bloodthirsty. He's ready to go. He is tiny. You could knock him over with a feather, but he is here to kill for his friends.
Fantastic. And last player for this evening, because unfortunately Lady Anastasia will not be joining the main party, although she will be there in the background doing, well, we'll find out what. For now, Asher.
Hi everyone, I am Derek Sword. Yes, Sword is my real last name to cover that theme as well. I am playing Asher. He is a Badger Lord. He's Prince of Salamandra and Lord of the Long Patrol, Protector of Redwall, and I'm hoping to add a few more titles in this game. He is super stressed right now. I'm going to say his anxiety level is probably the same level as mine because, hey, we have one day to prepare a peaceful abbey with no weapons for an invading army. Yay! All right, let's do this.
All right. So, in the wake of the announcement from Sparrow Queen, the Abbey falls into a slight chaos. There is exclamations of panic from some, simply determined expressions from others, but throughout all of this, the abbot remains calm and quiet. What would the three of you like to do?
Holt is probably rushing around, carrying anything he's been told to carry, if anything that needs to be prepared. Otherwise, he's pretty much doing as he's told. If he gets a moment or two, he might stop and just give a quick hug to like his sister or something, on literally like a run by hug, not anything. He's lucky he didn't knock her over. But he's trying to gear himself up. I don't think it's hit him yet what's actually going to happen.
Of course.
I think that Asher is kind of just snapping into Protector of Redwall mode. I hope I can finally use the 1 point in command that I took, and 1 point in strategy. So I think Asher is kind of doing. He's wearing figuratively a lot of hats right now. He's trying to prepare, any weak spots that he thinks there might be, trying to support the wall itself, and I think that he's also rushing to the smith and trying to either, if I know that the smith that actually works there is a little bit older, so if he's not able to actually prepare anything, I think Asher's trying to prepare spear tips and maybe arrowheads, and also trying to gather anything that they could possibly use as
absolutely.
weapons.
The recorder's assistant, Jenabel, it seems as you were setting up this kind of you were reigniting this forge that had once seen quite a lot of use. She is not super young. She's kind of entered that stage of being respected as an adult, like the rest of the adults of Redwall. And she is very, very interested in what you were doing and seems quite keen to help you with the forge and seems to pick it up quite quickly. You get the impression she's a naturally quite a crafty person who's very good kind of hand-eye coordination and is pretty good at working the tools after just a little bit of teaching. So Jenabel's going to be helping you out. Gruber, what about you?
I'm definitely going to be heading straight to the armory and just arming myself and then arming others. And if necessary, like training anyone. Why am I saying if that's necessary? 100% training these nerds how to fight.
Okay, so what we're going to do is you're each going to essentially have an action where you contribute towards the preparations of defense for Redwall. It's also worth noting that at some point you're going to have to take a rest because otherwise you'll essentially have been going for like 24 hours and you'll need to have had like a quick break and try to sleep perhaps before anything big happens, or you'll be going into whatever happens slightly exhausted. And at some point during these preparations, the abbot gathers you together, knowing that you three have survived brushes with this invading force more than anyone else, and you know the most about them. He visits you each in turn and asks you to meet with him in Cavern Hole. By now, the preparation began as soon as the news reached the Abbey, which was very, very late at night. So there's sort of a system where some Abbey beasts are taking shifts, taking some time to rest, and then they're getting up early to do their own preparation. So there is, at the moment, there's always activity going on in the Abbey. Some of the beasts have kind of ushered the Dibbons down. You can see there is actually a chamber beyond Cavern Hole that looks like it was dug out a very long time ago for perhaps a similar situation, which appears to be the most defensible position for non-combatants. But for now, knowing that you have a day, they're trying to go about as if the situation isn't too dire because they don't want to frighten the many young creatures that live at this abbey. Anyway, the three of you are brought together, and the abbot looks at each of you again, retaining this sense of calm, which perhaps it's his charismatic force of personality, you're not sure, but the abbot, Abbot Bertram is his name actually, it almost makes you feel calmer by being in his presence. And he regards you each gravely and sighs. The way that I see it, we have several options to ensure the safety of our home, our sanctuary. I see each of you have already begun your own preparations. I thought I might also pitch some ideas. I would be interested to see what our defender of Redwall would think of them, and indeed our other good friends who have seen battle with this formidable foe.
Absolutely. Let's hear what you have to say.
Well, we have large wooden troughs which we use for collecting apples. This usually at this time of year they've already been used, and so they are currently empty. We could set them up on the ramparts of the outer wall, fill them with stones, debris, old pieces of wall fragments that have been replaced and updated, and if it does come to a true siege, we'll be able to tip these down and rain them upon the heads of the phobes on the outer walls.
That sounds like an excellent idea.
What else? Yes, we've got plenty of, one thing we do have is plenty of scrap wood, crates, old barrels. If any of you are at all good with a hammer and nails, we could do with setting up some defenses on the walls to protect our defenders from arrow fire. It's another suggestion. And he carries on kind of listing these options for things that you could potentially contribute and help with. One of them, he does note, Gruber, that you have already started training and working with those in the Abbey who are determined to fight to defend it. And he kind of applauds you on this, and he says that if you wish to carry on helping them, that would be something that would be very valuable. So that's another option. And then the last thing that he suggests is knowing that we have nearly, well, at this point, probably about 18 hours to prepare. The last option is you could dig pitfall traps outside the Abbey gates and along the outsides of the walls if you wanted to try and catch the first wave of the enemy off guard when they arrive. And then he kind of opens the floor up to all three of you to see if each of you had any other ideas for how you might defend against this siege.
Holt sort of tries to take it in, like he's focusing. He's like, look, mate, I'm great at heavy lifting. I can get those troughs up there easy. And if you need someone to dig a hole, I can dig a hole.
Okay. He nods to that and looks very kind of grateful for your help and says, indeed, someone with your strength will be very useful for setting up the wall defences. We could do with moving a large quantity of stone up there as well. I imagine it'd be very useful for that.
Plainly, we should use every piece of furniture that we can find, and there's one gate to get in. Am I correct in that?
There are two, but the second gate is much smaller and more concealed at the south end of the Abbey. Sorry, the east end of the Abbey.
Still, if it's an entrance, we should make sure that all the trenchers, all the tables, chairs, anything we have that's not nailed down should be placed to defend those points. I think I had an excellent idea of using the apple trenchers to dump rocks and heavy things. Do we have any large pots we could use for boiling water or anything like that? Dump over the edge as well.
We have some barrels that are still watertight that will probably be empty now after last night's feasting.
As long as they are, don't catch on fire. Cold water won't do us any good, but yes, boiling water will certainly dissuade at least a few. How many defenders would you say we actually have?
He looks concerned and says, well, out of all of us living here at the Abbey, I would say at most 30 to 40 able-bodied fighters.
All right. Well, that's something to work with. Great. Well, we should focus. Sorry, Holt, do you have something?
No, Holt, literally remembering the size of the army, pauses and looks to the others. Is like, then we're going to really need to prioritize where they're going.
You hear someone clear their throat from behind your little meeting group, and Holt, you recognise it's your brother. The skipper and the small crew of otters who had escorted you to the Abbey have stayed behind, and they've also been helping with preparations. He crosses the room and joins your small council. and kind of puts a paw on your shoulder and just smiles at you. So, well, if it's any help, I'm planning to head out in the next hour or so with a few of my best. We're going to split up around Mossflower. We're going to contact the largest of the otter tribes and see if we can bring them to join the fray as soon as the enemy hits, hopefully before they arrive. If not, we'll be able to provide able-bodied and strong fighters from the rear.
Can Warbeak or any of the other sparrows perhaps see where our other allies are, if they could even carry a message to Goosum or the forces from Salamandastron?
The abbot nods and says, yes, I sent Warbeak out, and her scouts have already flown to see how much help we might be receiving. I don't know when they will return. They are, of course, having to be careful in case they are shot down. The enemy will no doubt be looking for aerial scouts, messengers, that sort of thing. But with any luck, they might be able to bring some more reinforcements to our gates.
And what about the shrews? They seem pretty fighty.
Well, we have not yet had any word from the Gyosim, but they might yet appear before our time becomes too dire.
What? The shrews haven't gotten here yet?
We're still waiting on everyone.
They were like right behind us. That's ridiculous.
They had to go.
Legs.
They had to go south first and check on the rest of their family, and then they said they might be back. I'm not putting all of my eggs in that basket. I mean, honestly, I'd feed those damn rooks if they'd fight on our side, but oh well. In the meantime, Holt, you should definitely see if you can find good archers. You're the best one with a bow. I think paws down. Gruber, you're doing an excellent job training everyone to cut pieces off of people. It's honestly unsettling. And Abbott, I think we should try to find any other weapons that we can, especially anything that can be used as a weapon, anything that has sharp points or heavy ends to it, anything that can be thrown or jabbed.
I can ask my sister, she works in the kitchen.
That'd be wonderful. Also, gardening equipment. I mean, we made do with what we found at the hedgehog house. We can improvise.
I can get on showing people how to at least use a bow and arrow if they ain't already.
We have a few keen marksmen there should be able to help you with that. Funnily enough, we do have a few well-made bows here, so we won't be completely bereft of hunting equipment. And he's looking, despite his calmness, you can sense this underlying deep anxiousness. This hasn't happened here at the Abbey for many seasons, and it's incredibly unusual for a force of this magnitude to attack. So I'm going to allow each of you to essentially pick 2 actions that you can perform. You can decide in what order you do them. So you'll also need to take a rest. So 1 rest and 2 actions, so you can coordinate when you would like to perform each of those. For example, Holt, if you wanted to help moving the heavy troughs and stone up to the walls, that could be 1 action. And then training archers could be your 2nd action, for example.
I think that's exactly what he would do. What he'd probably do is, first of all, just get all the heavy lifting done and up there. Probably have a short break in the kitchen, sit down. He probably aches. He's also probably covered in a lot of like dirt because he's been lifting all the stuff.
It is worth noting that a lot of those who aren't fighters. This actually includes Lady Anastasia's parents, who both work in the kitchens and the cellars. They are working overtime, baking and making food to make sure everyone is fed and everyone has plenty of energy for what's ahead, and they're just preparing rations as well for a siege situation. So the kitchens themselves are a flurry of movement. And many of them are also sorting out what's required for the preparation of food and any equipment that might be surplus to materials that could be donated to the Ramshackle Weapon Fund, as it were. How about you, Asher? Which 2 actions are you going to pick? And then we'll go through each of you with a bit more detail.
I think I'm going to focus on preparing the defenses for the wall and gates as the first action. I think Gruber has probably training covered. So aside from that, I'll probably aid in the forge. I think he's just trying to make basic weapons and armor, anything that, anybody who's never used something before, pot helms, maybe basic mail, something along those lines, spearheads, anything that can be fit to like the end of a rake, but yeah, I think those are defenses, and then anything to add to the force's weaponry and armor.
Okay, and Gruber, how about you?
I'm gonna keep training as many people as I can, and I don't know what my second action would be.
Is Gruber good at digging?
I'm so good at digging. Okay. My first action will be to train all of these silly little nerds, and then my second action will be to dig trenches.
All right. Okay. Fantastic. So let's go back to the top. We're going to start with Holt. You are helping the larger or the stronger beasts of the abbey. Several of the otters that stayed behind are also working with you on this. Between you drag these really heavy wooden and iron reinforced troughs that are used for apple storage and other fruits during the colder months to keep them good before the spring. You lift these and pull them up these stone steps that lead to the top of the abbey walls with their crenulations. And from here, you have a superb view of the forest below, and you can see the 30 or so feet of clear ground before the forest starts, and kind of get the impression that this is quite a vulnerable place to be if you are attacking the walls from the outside, and it's been kept clear of forest for this reason. But you get these big troughs in place, and then you start ferrying bits of stone and chunks of kind of rock and earth from around the abbey grounds, places where the wall has been rebuilt. There is the old red stone has been kind of stored in these neat rubble piles, which you start to move into these troughs. Could I have a athletics check to see how well you succeed at this?
One thing he can do.
Very athletic. Okay, yeah, absolutely. You help the otter crew, and your little squad kind of is incredibly efficient. And with your strength, you're able to carry great big sacks of this rubble to and from the abbey grounds and loading up these troughs. And you also make sure that they're quite easy to tip over the side of the walls, and you'll get a really nice kind of coverage and be able to get a good line of foes hit with the spray from this debris.
Yeah, I think he's on like a constant march, just up and down, even when he's just like, get it done. And I think if he sees anyone who's maybe slightly smaller, maybe just dragging one thing, he'll take their sack and sort of head up with it as well. But give them something else to do so they don't feel like I'm taking... Yeah. I need you to go do this for me whilst I take this up.
Absolutely. And you're on your way back from one of these runs to get some more of this rubble, and you see your sister scampering across the grounds, and she's carrying like a very small bundle, and she kind of runs up to you, bends over for a minute, hands on her knees, and is panting from the speech she was writing. Says, You forgot to have any breakfast, you big lug. How you expect you to build reinforcements with an empty stomach? And she kind of holds up this very freshly made shrimp and onion pastry and just kind of thrusts it in your face.
He sort of like takes it, looks at her like, I've never forgotten breakfast before. thanks. And he sort of gives her sort of like a, that proper older brother like rub on top of her head, like, smells great. And he just sort of starts to devour it.
She just kind of gives you
it's like all over his like muzzle and whiskers. It's everywhere.
She just kind of gives you a shove with her tail and says, just remember to look after yourself, you idiot, please.
I will, but what are you doing amongst all of this?
Oh, well, the adults say I'm not big enough to join in with the fighting, so I am going to be, I'm going to be protecting those of us that are down in Cavern Hole, right? And she holds out a fire poker that's kind of sheathed in her belt like a rapier, and kind of gives you this kind of fierce expression and says, but I know they won't get that far anyway, if you're out here.
And he sort of maybe squats down a little bit, like still like covered in this like thing as he's trying to wipe it away. He's like, they need people like you down there so that in case something does happen or something gets through, which it won't, but just in case, that you need to protect the little ones. Also, I'd grab a frying pan as well. You're much better at swinging than you are poking.
She kind of thinks about this for a second and goes, oh, you might be right there. Well, anyway, just, take care of yourself, all right? I'll see you later.
He gives her like a really quick hug. It's like that awkward hug where you pat each other on the back, like, yes, and then both shove each other away into a different direction.
And you see she very, very quickly turns and starts kind of scurrying back towards the kitchens, almost a little bit too fast. And like you can tell that she is very upset and trying to kind of brush it off with bravado. But as you kind of lick the last crumbs of this pasty from around your face, you can kind of see as she disappears back into the abbey itself.
Yeah, he's just like trying to wipe off some of the and then picks up another sack and keeps going.
All right, cool. So we're gonna go to the next one for the next person's first action. Be Asher, what was your first action that you would like to do?
I think that his main deal is making sure that both of the gates are thoroughly reinforced. So not only is the bar down, but they have tables that are angled against it, and there's maybe even a couple defenders there to just make sure that the gates don't fall.
Absolutely.
Less so on the gate that's not as well known, but still he doesn't want to be flanked mid-battle. He's also double checking for any weak points in the wall, and if necessary, maybe putting a mason on the weaker points. He's making sure that there's, bundles of arrows at the different points. Does Redwall have crenellations? I guess that's.
I don't think it does, purely because the wall itself hasn't got any interior. It's just a very solid wall with some. It has got crenulation, but it doesn't have like arrow slits or anything.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, at least on the top of the wall, then making sure that there's arrows for the archers. Yeah, I think he's kind of he's trying to double check everything. He's making sure that there's rations for the defenders inside. He's got a million things on his mind, and he's going through this mental checklist and trying to make sure that he doesn't miss any of the obvious things.
Yeah. Well, this sounds like a good opportunity for you to use that command skill.
Okay, sure. Okay.
What does that come under? I can't
fighting.
Okay.
I also have strategy under lore, if that's...
Oh, strategy is also good. I'll let you choose which one of those you'd like to use.
Okay, we'll do fighting, because that's where my 5 is.
Oh boy. Wow, that's an amazing roll.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you are everywhere at once. People can scarcely believe how such a big badger can be at the front gates helping prop up tables against the slats 1 minute, and then the next minute you're seen on top of the gates making sure that arrows are supplied and kind of buckets and other kind of pots at nice intervals, so there's always going to be a supply. And then the next moment you're down making sure people know what they're doing and helping to organize others. It's uncanny how quickly you snap to attention to organize all of these beasts, and they definitely seem grateful for it. And the mobilization of the Abbey is certainly improved. The efficiency at which the creatures are preparing, thanks to your very skillful organization, has certainly improved. And not only this, you get a lot of, maybe because it's the confidence and the efficiency with which you kind of go about what you're doing, a lot of the creatures who maybe were looking a little anxious, a little kind of skittish, and the way that for example, a mouse would look before it wants to bolt, a lot of them seems to have instilled in them a little bit more courage, thanks to your calm, professional way of handling the situation.
I imagine that he walks by the training grounds for Gruber's training, and there's two moles kind of chit-chatting in the back, and he just kind of walks up behind them and maybe just snaps them up to attention real quick. Pay attention.
Exactly. In fact, Gruber, you are kind of quite a way into your training at this point when you do see Asher come over to kind of inspect how things are going. How are things going? What exactly are you how are you training these creatures?
Well, the first thing I trained them was how to gird their loins. So we did like a fun thing where we cut the little, what are they called? The like tunics that they wear, and then they put them under their legs, and then they wrap them around so they're wearing like little pants, little booty shorts, if you will. And so now they have lots of leg mobility. So we're doing lots of high kicks. We're doing lots of like turning around really fast, like you do in video games where you're like, huh, huh. We're doing that a lot. Yeah, we took a break to do yoga to relax.
That's very
everyone
important.
was doing a really good job. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you have kind of 2 creatures who are here training under you. Anyone who's not helping with defenses has come over here to help, and they're kind of choosing kind of weapons that suit them, and working through these kind of stretches and exercises that you're leading them on. What role would this be? What role do you think this is, Gruber? How are you conveying your training?
I think it would either be I think it might be survival, because this is definitely like survival-esque, or streetwise, maybe streetwise is more history though.
Yeah, I think survival does sound like a quite a good application.
Because I'm not necessarily teaching them forms. I'm kind of just teaching them like, how are you going to live?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay, roll survival for me. Oh wow, everyone's pulling out them big rolls for the season finale, huh? Yeah, you go through a bit of a Mulan montage, and by the end of it, they're all kind of doing high kicks in unison. They're all kind of doing the tightrope walk across the pond perfectly, and like kicking arrows out of the air. It's quite something. And yeah, you're pretty proud of your little crew by the end of your training. And a lot of them are kind of, maybe you felt before you'd left the Abbey, there was this sense that one of the reasons, yeah, it's I'll Make a Mole Out of You is the name of this montage. And perhaps there was this feeling of maybe one of the reasons you went with that first volunteer crew that got you captured was not a desire necessarily to be noticed, but a desire to be maybe valued more for your own special skills, not for what people expected of you. And as this training is kind of rounding up for the hour or so, a lot of these creatures are looking to you with intense reverence and respect and admiration, and just, it's again similar to Asher, you've instilled a sense of confidence and determination in these creatures that perhaps they might not have had otherwise. Okay, so going back to Holt, what was your second action you would like to take?
His second thing would be, he's probably going to go and at least check out who these, thank you, who these other archers are. In particular, not to test them, but he wants to see what they're doing, sort of observe how they're doing it. If there's like a firing range or something.
Yeah, there's not really a firing range, but there is almost like an open playing field, wide kind of area of grass, where a few of these archers have kind of gathered. And they're not all archers. There's probably about kind of a ratio of about 1 to 4, in where like 1 in every five creatures will have a good quality bow, and the other 4 will be armed with slings, as they're kind of almost like a more common weapon that pretty much everyone has a sling, whether it's for just messing around or anything else. And you see that they've kind of stacked up some very old pots and pans on one of the low walls that kind of separates areas of the grounds in the garden, and are kind of practicing firing or throwing stones at this kind of makeshift enemy.
Yeah, I think he'll wander over, just maybe chat with some of them. Not anything in particular, but it's like he's just trying to, I think he's trying to practice nearby.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Almost like to, whether it inspires confidence or something like that, he's trying to show that he is there. And he'd probably, depending on how it works, he'd probably want to lead them.
Absolutely. Make a why not make a marksmanship check for me?
I can kind of do that. Hang on. I have 2 skill thingies.
All right, that's 2 bonuses then.
Okay. Oh, hang on. So I normally have 4, so I need to roll 6.
Yeah.
So take the 2 lowest out. Yeah.
Yes.
God, that's awful.
It's not that bad. Everyone's just been rolling like crazy so
as long as I don't shoot myself in the knee, because the irony.
No.
We all have a ton of advantages too.
You do have
I
some
need that for
advantages.
the real battle.
That's right.
That is true. All right, so you get to work with this beautiful bow that was given to you by the ruler of Salamanderstron herself. And you're very good at what you do. You're a talented marksman, and it's not long before some of the other creatures who are practicing kind of wander over and start watching you or asking you questions. And it's not excitement, it's kind of, again, this sense of admiration and excitement for what you're doing, as opposed to the prospect of doing it itself. The fact that they can see one of their number is clearly very skilled, again, instills them with this sense of, maybe we can do this. We've got, there might not be many of us, but maybe we'll have the advantage of having skilled creatures who know exactly what they're doing, and we do have a defensible position.
I think he would make his process known as well. Like, so when he lets loose the arrow, he breathes out to let all the air go out of his lungs, but he does it almost over the top, so that he's not telling them what to do, but they can watch it and see what he's doing.
Absolutely. And you can kind of see them, they're watching you carefully and learning from you. And again, in a little while, they're all practicing themselves, and their form has definitely improved a bit. Those of them who maybe didn't have as much experience are now a little bit better at what they're doing. And throughout all of this, the grounds are quite busy. There are people scurrying this way and that. There are still people loading things up to the outer walls, people still moving furniture to reinforce the doors. But your little group is almost more like an archery club. And you kind of have made fairly good... There's kind of a good sense of camaraderie as well, knowing that all of you will probably be on the walls when the time comes. You've kind of built up a good rapport between yourself and the others. There's actually a couple of other otters. Otters are, by the grace of the fact that they are very long, are naturally kind of adept with longbows because there's plenty of room to wield them, which means they can do some quite devastating kind of attacks with those. You see a couple of squirrels, which are very, very skilled with kind of quick fire short bows. And there's also kind of the odd mouse or vole in your group as well, who will all kind of gather round.
I think he does some of those really awkwardly heavy, he's not aware of how hard he hits slaps on the backs. Like every time someone either hits something they're meant to or anything, he's just walking around encouraging them. Every now and then he can't help himself. He sort of shows off with almost like a trick shot.
Absolutely.
Just to like make the atmosphere a little bit more positive.
100%. Okay, and Jay, you have a very kind of competent little group by the end of this practice session. So moving swiftly on to Asher, what was your second action?
Second action was working the forges.
Okay.
And I did at least want to address this. I think when he's kind of walking around with this prior action, he does check in with Lady Anastasia and make sure that she has a field hospital set up, and she's she doesn't have any wounded yet, but she's at least prepared for them.
Yeah, you see that she is working closely together with Sister Cecily, and the pair of them have essentially moved the infirmary, which was on like the third or fourth floor near the dormitories. They've moved that down to Cabin Hole, just before essentially where the dug-in siege defenses are for anyone who's not fighting. So they are well protected and in a defensible position, but there are enough mobile animals with some physical training that they are kind of ready to scamper to and from to get people out of the fighting if and when they need to.
So this actually kind of goes into the smithing thing. I will ask Lady Anastasia if she could actually make as many quilted doublets as she can. It's not the best kind of armor, but at least provides some kind of padding.
Absolutely.
And then, I think that he's going to head to the smith, and definitely I think his main priority is fixing the dents in his own armor, which he has yet to do. Sharpening, his sword, making sure that he's all ready to go, but then he'll help the recorder as well, as far as the spear points and pot helms and just all the basics go.
Okay, fantastic. So you are getting to work with all of this, and you're not alone. The recorder he's not doing so much of the heavy kind of hammering and shaping as such as he is making sure the forge stays maintained and giving instructions to beasts who maybe don't have as much experience. Jannabelle is helping you directly, and she is, as I say, this squirrel who's very keen and curious about kind of learning this craft, and she's quite talented. Then there's also Holt's father, who is he's a little bit past his days of being a fighter, and he hasn't really got the build for it, or the kind of he's not kind of one who really thinks he's capable of taking any other creature's life anyway. He's very peaceful, but he is very helpful at assisting with the forge, and he's very thorough. He doesn't take any shortcuts and is very careful with everything he's crafting, but always kind of listens to your orders and makes sure you've got what you need. And there are a couple of other creatures as well, those of a more craftsmanship persuasion, who help you out. So could I get you to make a crafting check for me, please?
Sir, I am going to use an advantage.
Okay.
That one.
All right, that's a lot better. Cool. So yeah, none of these weapons you are smithing are amazing, and they probably wouldn't last very long, but you don't need them to. What you need is quantity, not quality right now. So it doesn't matter if they break after 1 or 2 battles, because you need a lot of them to outfit this abbey of creatures.
Right.
And you produce a large kind of variety. You have a really good kind of pipeline going. You make sure if there weren't as many arrows, you make enough arrow bolts, and then you've got kind of creatures who are better woodwork and fletching, who are working on getting those made and put together. And then you've got Anastasia and a small crew of other small creatures who are helping stitch any kind of bark leather to armor or plates that you make. And you have an incredibly industrious little workforce which produces enough weapons to reasonably outfit your fighting force. Perhaps some of them will still have to use garden equipment or kitchen equipment instead of proper swords or spears, but it's still a very good supply for what you have to work with.
Right. I do want to make sure that I also sharpen, Gruber's secret murder knife, and also, check the stringing on Holt's bow and all that. And I figure, Asher made an intricate shield with like well-defined characters.
Oh, definitely.
When he was high in a cave in like an hour.
Yeah.
So I figure, maybe under pressure he could probably pop out just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. The workflow is quite efficient, and you get a lot done. To the point that you feel satisfied that at the very least everyone is going to have some manner of defense and offense.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to do? Any little things that wouldn't constitute a full check?
Yeah, little things would just be checking over that list in his mind and making sure that he hasn't forgotten anything. I mean, just looking around at this point, there's very little that he could physically do, but I think that he's kind of like I said, taking that commanding role. So he might just point to somebody who looks like that they don't have anything to do and give them a job.
Absolutely.
He's just doling out tasks.
Okay. And so we move to Gruber. What was your second action you would like to do?
I will be digging trenches, and I will be using it as a training exercise.
Okay.
So I do expect all of my little babies to help.
All right, so you make your way just outside the front gates of the Abbey and start digging. They don't end up as quite so much trenches, but a network of carefully dug mole tunnels which crisscross in that 30-foot kind of clearing around the outside of the wall that you have expertly rigged so that if one of the supports is kicked out, the whole lot will collapse on command. With any creatures standing on top of it tumbling into the tunnels and pit underneath. And this is kind of what you and your mole workforce start doing, and there are quite a lot of moles at the Abbey. And whether they are fighters or not, all of them are very good diggers. So you and your little crew start constructing this pitfall trap just outside the Abbey walls. Could you then roll? I'll let you choose. It can be survival or crafting.
I will roll survival. I'd like to use one of my advantages to replace one of those ones.
Okay. All right, not bad. Cool, it's an 18. So kind of according to the plan you had set out, you're able to construct this kind of almost kind of anthill crisscross of tunnels. And where would you like to? Where is the entrance on this side of the wall where you would like to put the kind of the support strut to kick out to make the whole thing collapse?
Where would I like to put it?
Yeah, so like where is the fuse, if you will?
As close to the someplace hidden, like in a bush.
Okay. So you pick a spot, and this can be just inside the walls as well, if you like, if you've kind of tunneled underneath the wall to create this thing. The tunnel itself will collapse when you want it to, so you don't need to worry about creatures getting in through that. But you find like a nice kind of a good little spot just underneath one of the walls where you can kind of put that the main kind of strut that if kicked out, there'll be a chain reaction, so the whole lot will just collapse in on itself.
Perfect.
Cool.
While we were digging, did we find any gold?
Roll an awareness check, just out of interest.
Struck oil. We could use that. We could use oil.
I got a 23.
Oh man, a 23. You don't find gold. What you do find is a small, very heavily weathered key. It looks like it was kind of maybe so this iron key. It looks like it's still in one piece enough to work in whatever lock it fits. But yeah, you have a small key.
All right, I'll pocket that.
Okay, so with your preparations done, you all feel this wave of weariness start to wash over you, and you know that you're going to have to take at least a short rest before the fighting begins, otherwise you'll risk being exhausted when it does get started.
Yeah,
Alright.
I'll definitely take a short rest.
Yes, you're all welcome to my personal quarters. I think Asher's actually going to sleep in where the tapestry of the mouse holding the sword was. I think it's like the Great Hall. It's near the entrance. And yeah, so he's not going to sleep in his armor. He's kind of assigned one of the many Redwallians to help him get his armor on when that needs to happen. But
yeah, you pick yourself a good squire.
yeah, but I think he still wants to sleep where he can get to the wall, just in case stuff comes sooner than it has to be. But I think he'll just lean up against the tapestry there because I think he finds a little inspiration with it as well.
Absolutely. All right. So you kind of set up a small kind of temporary sleeping area near the tapestry, and you drift off, or at least you do your best to sleep. I imagine you would have an easier job than most, kind of being more of a trained, disciplined warrior, in that sometimes you just have to make your body kind of accept sleep, even if you're very anxious or pent up for battle. So you don't have too much of a hard time finding decent rest. The other two of you both have both beds in the infirmary. You also there are plenty of dormitories which are made available to you if you would like to sleep in one of those, and also Asher has made available his own room.
I think Holt has every intention of going to a bed, but there's that open fire in the Great Hall, which he probably sits by, and having his little sister tell him to take care of himself has probably stopped to eat something again.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is a huge fire going, he will be right out there. He will be asleep, like very unelegantly sprawled over a chair.
And you're not the only one. There are quite a few that have decided to take a nap by the fire to kind of help them drift off. How about you, Gruber?
I don't think I have any issues going to sleep, but I will, instead of sleeping in Asher's quarters, I will go home. I'll go to my family and try and sleep with them. Yeah,
your family have a, there aren't that many outbuildings at the Abbey of Redwall. There's the Recorder's Cottage, which is where the forge is, and then there are a few very small dwellings near the gardens and where the produce is grown. One of these small dwellings is where your family lives. It is a small kind of semi-subterranean mole house. They look a bit like hobbit holes in that they have like this turf dome with a little round door that leads down into a very comfy, cozy little house. And your parents they're kind of to and fro. They are making sure that there are plenty of vegetables and produce that are all in storage in case of a siege situation. And they're also making sure that your 6 little brothers and sisters all have their belongings kind of packed up and everything that they want, and that they are safely sequestered with the other Dibbons. But you find your way to your old room and you remember it. It all comes back to you clearly. You had a little room next to your brothers and sisters' room because you were a little older than them. So you got your own space. And you have a little kind of round bed with a wardrobe that you always kind of, you used to kind of keep locked up because you had this thing where you liked your things to be locked because they were your things. And you snuggle up in your little round bed, very similar to how you always remember it, and you drift off. However, unlike Asher and Holt, who, whilst they are napping, perhaps lightly, they have a fitful rest with no interruptions. Gruber, you dream. And you open your eyes, and for a moment you think maybe you've woken up and it's already time to kind of mobilize and start getting your stuff together for the kind of the final confrontation. But as you come to your senses, you realize that you're not in your room. You look up and you see the beautiful tapestry that resides in the Great Hall, depicting Martin the Warrior confronting the horde of foes fleeing from him as he holds the sword aloft above his head. The room around you where you're standing is wispy, grey, and all the noises are kind of a bit muffled. You can see creatures hurrying this way and that, making preparations for the battle ahead, and you can see Asher is sleeping in this truckle bed that he set up underneath the tapestry. But what really gets your attention is Martin in the center of this tapestry, as he almost seems to glow with this radiant light. And as you're kind of observing in this dream state, he turns his head in the tapestry and looks at you and smiles. And very slowly, as if he's descending some steps that you can't see, he walks towards you from the tapestry itself until he is standing directly in front of you. And Martin is a mouse, so he's not a big creature, he's not incredibly tall or imposing, but he has this serenity to his features and this glowing plate armor that he wears. And this also shines through this smile that he gives you. He holds forward a small paw to you to take and says, "Please, Gruber, would you follow me?"
Do I have any of my weapons on me?
You would be as you were when you went to sleep. So if you had kept your hidden dagger on you, then you would have it on you.
I always have my hidden dagger on me. I will... Is he putting his hand out for... I would like to fight Martin. No, I'm joking. Is he putting his hand out for me to, like, take it?
Yes, it looks like that.
I don't take his hand, but I say, lead the way.
He gives like a very smooth chuckle and smiles again and says, "Gruber, your caution serves you well and will continue to do so in the battle ahead, as sad as I am that it must come to pass. Come with me." And he turns, and as he turns, the room you're in changes, and you find you're back in your room. You're standing in your bedroom. Everything, again, has this wispy, kind of ethereal quality to it. Martin turns to look at you again. "Gruber, you are not the largest of beasts, as I also was not when my time came to take up the sword to defend those who I valued. Neither are you the loudest of creatures, or perhaps the most." And he kind of tilts his head and says, "Well, perhaps a lot of folks don't see you the way you want to be seen. However, I have watched you, and your fighting spirit and your desire to protect those close to you is, well, it burns as bright as the brightest star in the night sky. And through this, I know you will come to inspire and to protect the creatures of Redwall Abbey, and in so doing, I know that this abbey cannot fall whilst protectors such as you will guard it. I have already given the title of champion to your friend, Asher. However, there is something I would like to give to you for the struggle ahead." And he turns, and you see as he walks across your room, and his kind of ghostly form kind of drifts into your wardrobe and through the door of your wardrobe and vanishes. And all of a sudden you wake up and your eyes kind of snap open and you're back in your bed, in your bedroom, and everything seems normal.
Mom! Mom!
There is a scurrying and a crash and then heavy footfalls, and then your mother kind of looks around the door to your bedroom and says, "What's the matter, dear? Are you all right?"
Mom, did you let anyone in here to look at me while I was sleeping?
No, of course not. Why would I do something like that?
Never mind. I need to get ready for battle now. Will you please close the door? I have to take off my clothes.
Oh, sure thing, my little mole, sure thing. And she kind of shuts the door behind her and goes back to whatever she was doing.
Is there something I can drag in front of the door?
Yes, there would be. I imagine you would have like an old clothes trunk on one side of your room, perhaps.
I'm gonna drag the trunk in front of the door, thinking that if there's a spooky man inside my closet, I don't want him to get out. And then I'm gonna pull out my fancy murder knife, and I'm gonna throw open my closet. Is it like a wardrobe? Or
it's like a wardrobe it's like a big heavy wooden wardrobe. And as you go to open it, you find that the wardrobe is locked.
That's weird. I wiggle the door really hard.
Roll an awareness check for me. Okay, that's still enough because you're the most aware mole. You remember that you used to have like a little ring of keys for all of your things that you kept safe, and you know that it was probably lost when you were taken prisoner back when you were captured by Warfare and the other kind of foe beasts. However, you suddenly kind of get the feeling that little key you picked up earlier today looked very similar to the little key you used to have.
It's just in my pocket, so I'll pull it out and put it in the lock.
Yeah, fits perfectly.
I turn the key and I throw open the doors.
All right. As soon as you open the doors, you are met with a bright light that almost kind of makes you stumble back a bit. And then you take a moment to adjust, and you realize it's not that something's emanating light. It's something is reflecting light from the candle by your bed. And what you see in your wardrobe is hung kind of in front of any kind of clothing there is a spectacular short sword. It is polished so bright silver that it as I say, almost seems to emanate its own source of light. It is it's quite a small blade. It's been made for a creature like the size of a mouse or a mole, and it has this incredibly beautiful blood red ruby set into the pommel of the blade, and you instantly recognize it as the sword that Martin carries in the tapestry.
My first thought is that one of my siblings has taken to a life of crime and has stolen the sword and hid it in my room. But I'm going to reach out and touch the sword.
The sword is cool to the touch. And you can see it's just kind of been hung up on like a very simple bracket that just hangs from the bar of your wardrobe.
How heavy is it?
It's not that heavy. It's very finely made, and the metal it's been forged from is very, very light.
Okay. I will take it and take the halberd as well, or whatever the thing is called, and sheath it and put it under my cloak.
Fantastic. You now have a very special short sword, which will deal damage equal to your athletics +1.
That's great because my athletics is 1.
But you don't know what else it might do if you were to use it.
What do I roll to attack with it?
Fighting. Same as your dagger.
Great. I'll move the chest out of the way and exit my room.
Okay. As Gruber leaves his little home that he has shared with his family for presumably most of his life before they moved to Redwall, we pan up and across the Abbey where we see creatures everywhere preparing for attack. And as this flurry of activity continues, we see one small squirrel who darts through the southern gate, which has been opened to allow him to pass. And this squirrel dashes across the grounds and into the Great Hall, looks about briefly, and then approaches Asher, who at this point is just stirring from his rest. You feel well rested. All of you, by the way, will be on full hit points and anything else that might have been depleted due to the kind of care you received at the infirmary. Asher, you recognize this squirrel as a scout that you sent out pretty much as soon as the news came that the army was almost here. And the scout is kind of panting and seems to have been running for a very long time, and takes a moment to catch his breath before speaking up. Says, "Sorry, Commander Asher, sir. The foe beasts, they're almost here."
Almost here as in how close?
They'll be at the walls in half an hour, I think. Half an hour tops.
Take a drink, catch your breath. Everyone, and he's gonna kind of like rouse everyone and kind of go over to Holt and pop him on the nose just so slightly. Everyone, it's time. Let's hold arms. And if there's a bell or a horn or...
Oh yes, just as you say this, you hear this deep resounding bong, bong, as the twin bells of the Abbey start to ring to alert everyone that the danger has now arrived. And the flurry of activity pauses for a second as everyone just kind of absorbs and kind of processes this news, and then it increases tenfold as people take up positions. They make sure that everyone who isn't fighting is safely in Cavern Hole, the medics are ready to go, and everything has been prepared. Holt, where are you when this happens?
I think when he gets bopped on the nose by Asher, he sort of springs up, locks eyes with his badger friend for a moment, but gives him a really quick nod, and probably like crashes through the chair he was asleep on, knocking it sideways, but starts sprinting towards like sort of, he didn't really he had his bow and arrows by his side whilst he was sleeping, and he's literally running, slinging it over his shoulder and yelling for the group of archers as he's trying to get up to the outer walls.
Yep, as you do so, any archers that or slingers or any other ranged attackers who aren't already on the wall on watch join you, and you start leading this procession out towards the walls.
I think before Holt can even get away, Asher's going to grab him by the shoulders and go, "Take care of yourself, and I'll see you at the end, all right?"
He's like, "Of course you will, mate," and sort of gives him like a slap on the jowl. He's like, "Come on," and starts sprinting down towards the courtyard. All
right, so you head towards the courtyard and the steps that lead up to the outer walls of the Abbey. Are you kind of taking position behind the crenulations?
Yes, I think he wants a good view of anything coming. He wants to be able to pick off anything, whether they've got a battering ram or something. He wants view of the main gate, so if he has to pick people off, he will.
All right, so the archers start to array themselves across the walls, and you take a little bit of cover behind these kind of archer defenses that have been hastily constructed out of scrap pallets and pieces of wood, which basically give you a bit of cover to get behind, a bit like these big wooden shields. Asher, where would you like to position yourself?
I think Asher's going to be on the wall as well, at least for the initial assault, and just he's not sure where they're going to focus, so he's going to try to get the best view. So he'll probably be close to Holt relatively. If Holt's closer to the gate, Asher might be on the side of the wall then, to try to command the archers. But, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And then Gruber, you can hear the bells tolling as you're almost back at the main Abbey building. Where would you like to go?
I'm going to head to at some point during the training, I imagine that we came up with like a spot to meet.
Yeah.
Probably near the front lines, because we're going to be a more not front lines, but kind of among the first wave of defense.
Yeah.
So we'll head there, I imagine, towards the walls.
Yes, so you're kind of inside the wall, just ready to fight whatever comes through the gate, if anything manages to make it through. And just as you're all taking up position, there is a shout that goes up from across the abbey. And the message kind of gets up to you, Asher, that there is something, some beast is outside the eastern gate, the little gate, and is demanding to be let in, describing themselves as a log of some sort.
Log. And he's going to rush towards the eastern gate. And what does he find there?
As you you dash with your plate armor, clanking as you make your way along, you get to the eastern gate where you've piled up not as much furniture as at the southern gate, but you hear a small voice that you recognize, and says, "Yeah, I thought you were in the market for some Gosim fighters. We'd quite like to come in, as there is a sizable army on our ankles."
Absolutely, friend. You're more than welcome. And he's going to shout down from the wall and see if they can quickly move the furniture and provide entrance to the shrews.
And as you make space and you open the eastern gate, you see Log himself, this resplendently dressed shrew, ready for battle, with his rapier at his side and his bandana worn proudly, and what looks like at least 100 fully armed shrews kind of in formation behind him that are all very, very raring for the fight as they start to kind of stream into the main abbey through the gate.
You are all incredibly welcome. Take up arms.
Well, we've got plenty of those. They don't call us the teeth of Mossflower Wood for nothing. Can you direct us to where you want us stationed?
Most of their I'm sorry if you can hear in the background. My mom's dog is bored, so he's just moaning. So I'm sorry about that. But their forces are mostly made up of these melee fighters, they're archers.
They look majority to be like skirmishers. Some of them have like dual short swords. Some of them have one long kind of elegant rapier, but most of them are like skirmishers and hand-to-hand fighters. There are a couple, probably about like 10% of them look like slingers and archers.
Right. Any of you that are ranged fighters, take to the walls. Half of you that are melee fighters also take to the walls and defend the archers. The rest of you attend the gates.
Right, and they do that. They start to fan out. The Holt, you are suddenly joined up on the walls by about 10 to 20 shrews who are all kind of bristling with arrows and bows and slings and kind of pockets full of very nasty-looking sling stones. One of them kind of recognizes you, and you recognize it as the shrew that made you that stew back in the woods. And he kind of trots up to you and gives you a big toothy grin. Says, "Yeah, we gonna clobber some phobeasts today."
And he looks down as he's literally putting an arrow, like knocking an arrow. He's like, "Oh, you all right, mate? It's nice to see you again." And sort of find a spot, get yourself comfy, and we're gonna once this is all over, why don't we have another one of your stews?
I think that sounds tidy to me, Collie.
Fantastic. And he sort of starts knocking an arrow, and he sort of directs some of the shrews to almost stand in between the other Redwall folk, like where there's gaps, almost so that it's creating a wall of arrows when they're least, rather than anything else.
Absolutely. All right. So as everyone kind of finds their position, there is another moment of stillness. And this persists for a little while. Everyone who's on the wall, so I think this will be Asher and Holt at the moment, could you roll awareness checks for me?
this. Oh, actually no, because I added to it. I can do a bit more.
Yeah, you're
now.
not that bad. You're not that bad.
Maybe.
Okay, so Asher, you were the first to notice that there is movement at the edge of the tree line, about 30 feet away from the wall, before this open area begins. And then as you are kind of taking this in, you kind of pick up the sound of a sudden cheer that goes up in the woods before you. There is howling and bellowing and just a war cry that's clearly being done to try and frighten everyone in the abbey. And you see at your side some of the abbey beasts do look a little bit nervous, and Holt, you also see some on the walls are a little bit cowed by this kind of shrieking and howling that's just rising up from the trees in front of you, and you can't actually see who it's coming from just yet, but you do, from this kind of bellowing noise, definitely get an idea that you'll be facing a lot of foes.
I have a point in courage. Is it possible to roll for that and maybe try to like rouse them and shake them from their fear?
Absolutely. Roll that for me then.
I'm gonna use another one of my advantages.
Okay.
There we go.
Fantastic. You start singing an old Long Patrol war song, an old kind of patrol ditty that's all about seeing through the battle to come home to a mighty feast. And you sing so loudly and so deeply from the very kind of bottom of your stomach that you start to drown out the sound of the hollering and the shouting from the woods. And it's some of the other Redwallers and shrews that know the song join in with you. And Holt, and also Gruber, you can now hear there is this answering chorus of this old marching song that's just being sung back at these attackers. And the morale of the fighters around you seems to remain intact.
Yeah, I think he's pounding on his shield to the beat and trying to,
I think Holt is, when he hears his friend start to sing, he probably starts off humming and then, probably in quite a low voice again, starts to sing along until the otters and the shrews and all the other archers around him start to maybe copy or hum or something.
Yeah, everyone, even if they don't know the words, are at least like bashing a shield or stomping their paws. And it seems like the foe is aware that its tactics aren't working. And there is, again, this moment of this, there's this kind of moment of inspiration where you have completely outshone them. And then the shout goes up from the woods, and you hear a low, gravelly war horn blast, like one short, sharp burst. And then the tree line starts to boil with bodies, and the first ranks of the enemy charge forward towards the walls of the abbey. And they are charging, this is Holt, a little bit to your, it would be your left. So kind of on the southeast side of the wall is where the army mostly seems to be mustered. And there are scores of creatures now running at full pelt towards the walls. What would you like to do?
Holt, first of all, as soon as they start coming out of the tree line, he holds his hand up for everyone all the archers to extend the string of their bow. And then when he gets what he deems enough of an eye line, enough to make this sort of like this swarm of arrows to go out, he just lets out a short whistle to let them know.
All right. The order to fire is given. Could you roll for me a marksmanship?
I can. Or if my laptop stays upright, I can. There we go. And I've got 2 speciality in it, so I'll roll 6 dice rather than...
Absolutely. Woo! Woo, that's a lovely roll. As you call for the order to fire, the Redwallers and Shrews alike, side by side, let fly their arrows and slingstones. And almost the entire front line of this invading force crumples to the ground under this deluge of projectiles. Another line comes, and then another line, and there are more creatures taking their place. Do you make the call to keep firing?
He probably makes up another sort of that hand gesture for them all to get ready. Again, he's waiting for a certain amount to come through each time. He'll probably look over to Asher, and because I'm assuming he's on the other side of the gate, and he's like, for Redwall, as he sort of like shouts, and then he whistles again and lets loose another flurry of arrows and pulls out his own bow.
All right.
Starts trying to pick people off.
Absolutely. Make one more marksman check for me. Your old roll is still carrying over for a while, and it also means that it's kind of like almost a bit of a collective roll. Fantastic. That's still very good. So you're just picking off these beasts left, right, and center, but there are so many of them. There are a lot of these creatures, and they're just swarming almost kind of World War Z style, like the bottom of the walls. You're not quite sure, like, it doesn't look like they're trying to take the walls down. It's just this mad swarm attack. And you see that a lot of these creatures are dressed in very raggedy armor. These seem to very much be the shock troops of the army and not main fighters. And then in this kind of mass of stoat and weasel and rat, and there are squirrels, there are lizards, there are all sorts of creatures in the attacking force. You see kind of spaced equally with at least kind of 10 feet between them, a line of very muscular, more trained individuals charging forwards, and they are carrying what look to be fairly hastily made siege ladders. And they're each trying to essentially, they'll dig the bottom of the ladder into the ground, and then the force of the creatures charging forward starts to kind of ride the ladder up until you kind of hear the top part kind of clack clack onto the actual ramparts itself. And the creatures start swarming up these ladders towards the walls.
I think Holt not panics, but there's an immediately start moving. He yells to everyone, push them back, push the ladders back, we can't let them go over the walls. And if he's near one of them, he's literally just going to shove it and try and push it back.
Absolutely. Asher, are you also kind of reacting in kind to this?
Absolutely. I think another thing that Asher tried to look for were pitchforks among the gardening tools, and he's kind of tried to place those where he thought ladders would be to hook the top rung and shove it back if there was enough effort to do so. But yeah, no, he's drawn his sword, and he's kind of, while he has two things in his hands, he's also trying to just push his weight into ladders and strike down anybody that's getting over. His main goal is defending the archers right now.
All right. Could you both roll, if for now, as you're trying to kind of push off these ladders, could you both roll athletics checks for me? Oh wow. Okay, that's both good enough. You both, between you, you're kind of going from, you're trying to kind of like kick these ladders down, and you kind of see any creatures on them kind of shriek as they fall back into the mass of fighters underneath them on the other side of the wall. However, a few do manage to climb up and get onto the ramparts and whip out rusted short swords and cutlasses and axes. And there are now some of the enemy on the wall with you. So we are going to roll initiative, but first, Gruber, you're currently stationed with the ground troops, just kind of in front of the large gate, but you can see that there are now enemies that have managed to swarm on top of the walls with force of numbers. What would you like to do?
Is everyone in the group that I trained, do they all have like melee weapons, or do any of them have bows?
Some of them have things like short swords, but they also have slings, so they've kind of got slings as well. I believe you have a sling, don't you?
I have a sling, but I also have a short bow.
Oh, you do have a short bow, don't you?
We're gonna start slinging rocks. the sharpest rocks that we can find.
Fantastic.
And
I'm gonna
maybe knives.
I'm gonna get you to also roll initiative. So could everyone please for me roll initiative? I'm gonna treat the baddies as a mob, so they're all gonna have the same score.
Remind me what initiative is again?
You basically just do an agility check.
Agility.
Okay, I need a piece of paper. This will do it.
Alice Holt is so strong.
that's like Holt is very slow. He's very strong. Whereas you've got Gruber, who's like moving at Mach 1.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so is that Asher with a 16?
Yes.
Okay, so we start with 17, 10, and 10. What's your agility score, Holt?
My agility score is 3 die.
All right.
Yes.
That's cool. It's the same. They will go first, though, because they did not roll any ones. Okay, so we're starting with Gruber. If you are trying to lob stuff at these attackers, and you can see there are probably at least like 3 or 4 up on the walls that are within range of you. It's like a weasel, a squirrel, and kind of 2 stoats. Who would you like to try and target?
I'll go for the squirrel.
Okay. Okay, you kind of take a minor action to load your short bow or your sling, whatever it is you'd like to use, and then if you could roll a marksmanship test for me.
I will roll bows. I mean, I'll use my bow because I have a +2 to that. 6 F6, that's not anything.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot. Cool, let me just consult my debrief. Right. Which one what kind of creature are you looking to hit? You're going for the squirrel?
Squirrel, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's definitely gonna hit, and by, wow, one heck of a margin. Cool. What is your agility?
It's, the damage will be 5.
Okay. Yeah, you take aim and fire the short bow, and you shoot the squirrel right in the head, basically, and it just crumples down, and you see its body just fall over the edge of the ramparts and drop down on the other side of the wall. Next up, Asher. You are on the wall, and you have a vicious-looking rat kind of facing you down, kind of snarling as it levels this nasty-looking spear at you.
Yeah, I think so. He currently has a shield and sword. I think he's going to just, if it's within melee range, strike with the sword.
Absolutely. Roll a fighting check for me. If you would like, you can make this a charge attack for that extra damage.
Sure. What does that entail?
A charge attack means you roll with, I believe, 2 fewer dice, but you get +5 to the damage.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can actually do that. And yeah, okay. So it's 14.
That's still going to hit for, I believe, double damage. So what would your standard damage be +5?
Let's see. Standard. It's been a second. Athletics +1, so that's 5.
5 + 5, 10. You would deal 20 damage. You just cleave this rat in twain in front of you. And you kind of maybe kick the corpse over the edge of the ramparts because you don't want bodies piling up here.
It just makes a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a red wall already, but still.
It is. Yeah.
All right, as you kick the body down, it is now the bad guy's turn. There are probably 3 creatures within range of both of you. First up, there is a stoat with a nasty-looking scimitar, which is going to strike at Holt. As Holt just pushes down the ladder it crawled over the top of, it's going to try and take a strike at you. So, it is going to be rolling. Okay, what is your combat defense, Holt?
It is 12.
12. Okay, this is going to hit, but only by a margin of 1. So you would take, let me have a look. You would take 3 points of damage, but I believe you have an armor of 2 or 3?
3. I soak 3 points of
Fantastic. Yeah,
damage.
you soak the damage as the scimitar kind of just bounces off of your armor. And the The stoat kind of snarls and is going to take another attack because you can do 2 minor actions. So it's going to go again. 11. This one's not even going to hit. It kind of charges at you. Now it's really angry. It's worked up already into a frenzy and just kind of misses you completely as you sidestep out of the way. It isn't... actually, no. Going back to Asher, you are currently confronted with a weasel who kind of appears behind the dead body of its comrade that you just slew and is going to jab at you with a short spear. This one's...
Right.
Yeah. What's your combat defense?
7.
7, so that's going to hit by a margin of 2. However, even though this would do 8 damage, I believe you soak all of that.
Soak 9. Yep.
As it just kind of hisses viciously as the blade of the spear just kind of glances off your armor, and now you can see that fighting has broken out in earnest in the ramparts in general. Creatures are now kind of fighting paw to paw. Those of them that maybe didn't have time to get out arms. They seem to be defending themselves fairly well, perhaps due to your good training you gave them. But you're able to kind of push back some of them, but there are still creatures swarming up these ladders. We'll go back up to top turn with Gruber.
I'm just going to take aim at another one. So the squirrel's gone. You said there were 2 weasels and...
Yeah, so you can see there are 2 weasels that are kind of terrorizing some of the shrews who were on the walls being archers, but they've now had to whip out their rapiers to defend themselves from these weasels that are attacking them.
I'll go for one of the weasels.
All right, roll a marksmanship check for me. Oh my goodness, your rolls are crazy. All right, so that would do, it would normally be a 5, your damage. Again, that's going to be doubled to 10, which is enough to, again, just shoot one of these creatures in the chest, and it just goes down. And you see the 2 shrews, now they have the numbers advantage, finish off the other weasel fairly quickly. And handily, and we are now on Ash's turn. You have this, I think I described it as it was a slightly smaller weasel that's kind of crawled over the body of its companion to try and get you with a spear.
Is there any way to use... Well, no. No, I'll use the sword attack again. I was thinking of pushing him over the wall, but I think the sword attack achieves that goal and then some.
Okay.
So...
Them's fighting words.
Those are fighting words. 2 ones. All right, cool.
All right,
so
that's still going to hit by a margin of 2. So your damage would normally be 5. Again, double to 10. You were able just to straight up cut down this weasel. It's very quick. It's very bloody combat. There's not many blows exchanged. It's just who has basically the drop on who as to who wins up here on the wall. And what with your superior armor and arms, you seem to have an advantage over these shock troops that have just been set up towards you.
I'm feeling very Aragorn right now.
Yeah, you're just kind of knocking down these faceless orcs. But we are now back to... Actually, you do have another attack, so we have another minor action, so you can, if you want, use that to move across the wall to where there are more enemies, since you kind of cut down all the ones in your area.
Yes, absolutely. I will do that.
All right, as you kind of, Naruto, run your way down the wall to where a couple of rats have managed to climb out and are accosting a squirrel and a mouse who are fighting them off as best as they can. It is now actually those bad guys' turn. One of the rats turns and sees you and is going to leap at you with this kind of crude rusted sword.
Question, did Holt get an attack in the end, or was it countered by him being attacked?
Oh, sorry, I thought...
No, I'm just trying to work it out if
I might have actually skipped your turn, actually. If you would like to take that now?
All he'll do is the one that was swiping at him and missed. He would have tried to catch hold of the weapon of it and probably just throw his full body weight towards this creature to try and shove it off the...
Fantastic. Make an
wall.
athletics check for me.
Okay. Oof.
Even with 2 1s, that's still a very good result. Yeah, you... it's actually going to be contested, but I don't know what the point is. Nope. Okay, yeah, you bodily just shove this this, I think it was a stoat, I think. You just throw it off the wall and it plummets down into the mass of fighting bodies underneath who are kind of jostling to also try and get up on the ladder. However, you've knocked down the nearest one, so they've had to kind of split a bit. So just as he's about to hit the ground, the kind of creatures he was going to land on kind of move aside and just hits the ground with a crunch. All right, so now we'll do the baddie's turn. These two rats, the one with the sword looks up at Asher and just kind of has this, it's not a madness, but it definitely seems to be the frenzy of battle. Otherwise, you think they might just go for someone who isn't in plate armor. And 19. Let me just check my, I believe your combat defense, did you say it was 7?
It was. Is.
7, so that's by degree of plus. All right, this one might actually get you. This would be a total of 12 damage. So I believe you take 3 of those.
I do.
As you kind of you kind of are almost startled by this rat is a lot quicker than you thought it was, and this gash just opens up on your shield arm as it manages to get just around you quicker than you thought it would. Holt. Meanwhile, on the other kind of wall, on the other side of the gate, another of these creatures has kind of charged towards you. It seems like in the moment they're just coming thick and fast. Although the shrews around you are doing an excellent job of repelling them, they kind of see you as a nice big target to try and hit. So there is another rat which is going to take a swing at you with an axe. Does a 14 hit, I think?
Yes, it does.
All right. You would take 4 damage from this guy, but I think that's reduced to 1 by your armor.
Yep, 1.
Okay, as it just manages to like nick your ear on the downswing.
It's like, ow, on the way around. As I'm didn't even notice this rat come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not very comfortable. But it is now your turn, Holt.
I think is this one that sort of slices at his ear and probably catches, maybe takes the top of it off, like
yeah, so a little.
He clamps like down on his ear and just turns round and tries to kick this thing or swing his tail like in the opposite side, almost like more of a reaction of get it away rather than
fantastic. Make a fighting unarmed check to try and whack it off with your tail. Or you can use athletics, I think, as well, if you would like to. That makes as much sense.
Okay, I think it's the same. That can't be quite the same.
Oh boy, yeah, I'm not even going to bother rolling. I physically can't beat that. As your tail just wham slams into this rat in the stomach, and you kind of see the wind get kicked out of it as it just kind of coughs and wheezes. But is also then realizes it's falling back down onto the ground on the outside of the wall with a basically lands on top of the weasel that you'd already thrown over with another crunch.
It's kind of like clamping onto his ear, like ah, or like yelling after. Probably can't hear him yell over the commotion that's happening, but be sure that he is yelling.
And then we go back up to top of turn with Gruber. Gruber, just before you move, you hear a shout go up. From across the field that's then echoed and then again. And it says, break down the tunnels! And this shout that just kind of goes up all around you. What would you like to do?
What did the shout say? They're in the tunnels?
Break down the tunnels.
Okay. I'm going to do that.
All right, so you've positioned yourself so you're not far from that little bush that you hid the kind of like the entrance utility tunnel at. Are you going to kind of like run towards that and dive in to kick down the last support?
Yes.
All right, make an agility check just to see kind of how quick you do this.
It's a 17.
Fantastic. That's plenty enough. You almost like football slide on the ground with your paw out and just kick out this wooden strut that's supporting this tunnel, and you quickly scramble back so you're not caught in the collapse. As like a chain reaction, there is this crumbling, cracking sound as the ground and Holt and Asher, you would both see this. The ground just outside the walls in like these trench-sized tunnels starts to crack and crumble and collapse in on itself, and there's kind of shrieking and shouting as the creatures on top of it are caught by surprise. They start plummeting into these pits below, and the ground just starts breaking and collapsing around of them, and many of them are kind of just buried under the under this kind of earth collapse. And Gruber,
Nice.
do you kind of then kind of return to your troops?
Yeah, do I still have a minor action left, or did that take up both of my actions?
It would take a minor action to get back to your group,
Okay.
or you can do something else if you'd like.
No, I'll get back to the group.
Okay, as you kind of return, you're spattered with like mud and earth and dirt, but you kind of, it's that kind of image where you're almost slow motion walking away from the destruction and things just crashing about behind you.
He's wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, basically, you just materialize some sunglasses out of nowhere. And yeah, so we need next up would be Asher. Asher, you can see there are now countless of these enemies just floundering and trying to claw their way out of the mud and the earth that's collapsed all around them. You can see reinforcements and are coming out of the woods and are filling in their ranks, but you have a few moments to essentially have breathing space before the next wave hits the walls.
I thought he was currently engaged with someone.
Oh,
rat.
sorry. Yes, you've got a rat left in front of you, don't
Right.
you?
Yeah, not to make things harder for myself. He will actually. He can't. He doesn't know where Gruber is because Gruber is a shadow in the night. But
Yep.
when the tunnels and everything, he'll say, "Way to go, Gruber!" Just shout it to the openness of Redwall. And then yeah, he's going to try to attack this rat with his sword.
Hit sword. Okay. Roll to hit for me.
All right, it's 14.
14 still enough. You'll do 1
Okay.
degree of damage. So you would do 5 damage with swinging your sword. It kind of snarls as you open up this great gash across its shoulder. It's still standing. Would you like to take your second attack since you have minor action?
Yeah. Does it have to be a different weapon, or can that also be this?
It's basically just like the backswing.
Okay. Then
Since
yeah.
you just did a normal attack rather than a big charge. Oh wow, yeah, that one's much better. With this one, you lop off the rat's head, and it just kind of tumbles over the edge of the walls. The body slowly kind of does that slightly weird thing before it kind of falls down a few moments later. All right, and you have cut down one more rat, and now, as I say, you have this breathing moment as the reinforcements take some time to replace all of those that have just fallen into this deep pit. All right, so with that, they're going to essentially, the bad guys are going to spend their turn refilling. I believe, was there one? Actually, no, there aren't any in front of Holt because he's thrown them all off the wall. All right, so you all have 1 turn to kind of catch your breath. It's up to you. Is there anything you'd like to do?
So there's not like a bunch of enemies at the bottom of the wall, like we.
No, there are a lot, but at the moment they're all floundering in the pit and trying to kind of climb the way out. You would actually, there would be some shouts around you of like, oh, we should tip over the stone troughs. Drop the stone on their head.
Yeah, if they're concentrated right beneath the wall, then
Yeah,
absolutely.
they are kind of directly beneath where the tunnels collapsed.
Then yeah, Asher's going to give the command to dump the trenches then.
All right, so shout goes up and is kind of one by one. It kind of goes down the line of the wall. Holt, you hear Asher call out as well to tip over the troughs of rocks. Are you two gonna take part in this?
I think Holt will give the command, but he's also trying to get with all of these rats and things that have just come up onto the battlements. He's trying to make sure that all of his archers are back.
Yeah,
keeping their position and making sure they've got a rhythm to what they're doing.
Yeah, there are a few wounded who were hurt in the wave of enemies that got on top of the walls. But it looks like they've already kind of been taken off the front lines by the medics and are being seen to. And you see some of the stronger creatures here on the wall with you. A couple of other otters have started essentially tipping up this great big trough of stone. You see it start to cascade and dump over the edge of the wall. And slightly sickening sight on the bottom. You just hear this shouting and shrieking of the foe underneath getting pelted with this heavy debris. Asher, are you helping with the other one?
I think Asher's actually. I think he's delegating to, because especially with the shrews that are up there with the archers, I think they could probably handle dumping over the trench. I think what Asher's actually doing is looking towards the tree line and seeing if he can spot the main three that he's been looking for. So either Wargvir, Lady Dagmira, or the snake, and seeing if any of them are into play yet.
Interesting. You roll an awareness check for me.
So 15.
15. That's enough. You look aside to the gate and you make out movements down on the ground. Very much unlike the hollering, shouting, and screaming of the other beasts that have charged the walls, you see a few creatures that you didn't notice before. They have been painted in like dark river mud, so they are a little bit hard to spot against dark ground. And you notice that it looks like they've been piling up kindling and firewood against the outer side of the main gate.
Okay, yeah, Holt, I think, is right above the gate. He's gonna shout, Holt, directly beneath you, they're building a fire.
Holt like literally gets up half hanging off the side of the battlements to lean right over and have a look, and he sort of throws back to the others and maybe down into the courtyard like, water, we need buckets of water now.
All right, there is an immediate scurry of movement in reaction to this, as Redwallers, especially like those who are non-combat, who are essentially acting as water carriers to make sure that none of you like collapse or anything, start kind of scurrying and bringing water up the battlements. Gruber, is there anything you would like to do?
How far? No, I don't want to abandon my little babies. Are there still any on the walls trying to clamber over?
It doesn't look like it. It looks like the defenders on the walls have managed to either cut down or throw any invaders off of the walls.
Okay. And no one has made it past the wall so far? Like
no one yet has got into the main kind of grounds.
And where are Asher and Holt?
Asher and Holt are on either side of the gate. Holt's almost like on top of it, and Asher's like a little way to your right, kind of a little way down the wall. If you shouted really loudly, you reckon that they'd probably both hear you.
I think for the time that I'm just going to stay where we are and kind of see how things unfold after this little bit of respite.
Of course. Yeah, and a lot of the creatures in your platoon are like making sure they kind of grab a drink of water. They're helping anyone who was injured on the walls back out so they can get medical treatment. And as you're kind of making sure everyone's ready to go, a couple of creatures run past you carrying this immense cooking pot, which has been filled to the brim with water. And they look like they're probably usually just kitchen beasts who work in the kitchens, but they've kind of bravely kind of carry this huge pail of water up the steps next to the gate. And Asher and Holt, you can both see that they're bringing this huge pot of water.
I think Holt will hurry down towards them so they don't have to come up into the firing line effectively, and grab it off them and start making his way up the wall with it himself.
All right, it is immensely heavy. This is almost like a bathtub of water.
Then he's going, Asher!
It's all right. You've already got, there's a couple of otters that have kind of seen what you're trying to do and kind of dashed to help you. And between the three of you, you managed to carry this huge, essentially bathtub-sized soup cauldron above to where the gate is, looking down at all of the kindling and firewood. And you can see looking up at you is this very skinny kind of spindly weasel who is kind of just snarling up at you, who has like a lit torch in one hand, who's just kind of snaked out from the tree line.
I think he's at the moment he's focused that if that door catches fire, then they're gonna have a real problem. So he is, if he can quick enough, get it to the top of the wall and just tip it over. He doesn't care who's underneath there or anything, but he's just tipping this up to try and put that fire
All right,
out.
yeah. Make a athletics check for me.
Okie dokie. I have 2 speciality in it as well, but I forgot to roll it.
I roll those then. That's much better. As with the help of the other otters, you just upend this enormous bathtub cauldron of cold water, and it just instantly douses the weasel and the torch and just soaks all of the wood that they had piled up on the gate. And you hear both actually, Asher and Holt, could you both roll awareness checks for me?
Awareness, sorry. Was
Yes.
that? Awareness.
Ooh, that's a good one from Asher.
It's a 19 for me.
I didn't roll it properly.
All right, Holt, you're too kind of preoccupied with checking to make sure all this wood has been thoroughly doused. But Asher, you hear from the edge of the trees, and the only reason you pick this quiet voice up is because it's so different in tone and pitch to all of the other voices and the shouts from the enemy. You hear a very gentle voice kind of raise itself and say, "Uncle, your plan failed. Now it's my turn." And then you hear a shifting from the woods. You hear the sound of something immense crushing twigs and grass and stone underneath it. And the next thing you know, this enormous adder bursts out of the undergrowth and streaks towards the front gate and just smashes into it. The wet and doused firewood that had been placed up against it just bursts to either side as it just starts hammering its body in completely abnormal behavior for a snake against the door. And this thing is huge. This is a very large serpent, and as you look down and you see these bright orange eyes, you absolutely recognize that you've seen it before. And the snake is just hammering like a battering ram against the door. And Gruber, you can now hear this incredibly heavy kind of thud repeated now as something just smacks against the outer gate, and you can see the gate is moving a bit, and but the barricade you've placed on your side of it is holding for now. But I'm gonna start doing some rolls.
Super cool. No, this is totally chill.
Can I see what's hitting the wall?
You cannot see. Oh, if you want to climb up on the walls to look, absolutely. Basically, I'm going to say for a moment we're out of initiative, so you can have like 1 or 2 actions to kind of work out what you're doing.
Yeah, I want to climb on top of the wall and see what that is.
All right, yeah, you look down and you see this enormous adder with this diamond pattern and bright orange eyes, and you recognize this creature as the thing that kind of took away your memories before you set out on this journey.
And they're just running into the wall?
The adder, yeah, it's really weird behavior, and you have quite good husbandry knowledge. This creature is just throwing itself, like with reckless abandon, with seemingly no self-preservation, like a battering ram at the wall. And you can see the snake is taking some damage from doing it. You can see like dislodged scales and like a bit of like dark blood trickling out from where the scales have been kind of buffed apart on the nose of the snake. But yeah, it's almost like frenzy just throwing itself against the gates to Redwall. Where's my stats gone?
I'd like to run to the wall next to Holt. Sorry, do your thing.
While you do that, I'm going to use one of my advantages. That's better. Okay. All right, so you run over to Holt.
Yeah.
And all 3 of you are now standing in the same place.
Holt's looking down at this snake that's currently, he's picked up his bathtub and he's like, do I throw it? Do I throw it? Do I throw it? Like trying to work out, he doesn't, like whether he's going to throw this bathtub at the snake.
Yes, do it. Do it. Do it.
I was going to save the bathtub, maybe aim arrows at the snake.
That's a big snake!
Don't kill the snake. Don't kill the snake, just knock it out.
Alright, throw the bathtub, that's fine.
I'm gonna throw, and he just throws the bathtub down the side.
Make an athletics check for me.
I'm gonna use my 2 speciality die as well because I need this thing to be knocked out. Yeah!
Ooh, that's a big roll. Okay, so that's take away 3. It's still a tidy 35. How much damage does a bathtub do? I'm gonna say, what is your athletics?
7.
7, isn't it?
7.
So you deal 21 damage to this snake as this bathtub just flies down from the ramparts and collides with it. And it was essentially a massive porcelain bathtub cauldron type thing, and it just smashes on the head of this creature. And you see the snake teeter and sway for a moment before, with this kind of recoil, it just hurls itself in a frenzy again at the door. And it is definitely taken a lot of damage, that's for sure. But it is just crazed. And with that, there is a cracking and a splintering sound from the gate itself, as there is this kind of quiet moment where, like, you can see this crack just run down the length of the gate before it just bursts apart, and this enormous serpent rages through and twists and twines through the wreckage of the barricade, and kind of madly tries to get its way into the courtyard. And this thing is kind of, if you're standing on the wall on top of the gate, it's now directly below you inside the Abbey grounds. And as soon as that happens, there is another kind of cheer that goes up in the woods ahead of you, and you hear a guttural kind of gravelly voice just scream out, "Charge!" And then there is this tidal wave of creatures that just start to sprint with not really any organization, that just kind of throw themselves running pedal to the metal towards the gates of Redwall, with the snake kind of half in and half out the gate trying to untangle itself and snapping at anything that gets close. What would the three of you like to do?
Cool. No, this is all great. I've seen the two towers, okay? I think Asher's first thing is he's going to shout, "Fall back to the Abbey," and then I am going to use a destiny point.
Ooh, I like that.
And I am going to leap down on the snake and try to cut at it with
amazing.
With
so
sword.
Your shout goes up, and you just see as Asher dives straight off of the wall above the snake, kind of Dovahkiin Skyrim style, blade first towards the snake. Cool. So I'm gonna make this like a free charge attack because you've got the momentum of your fall behind you. And because you spent a destiny point, I'm not going to have you get any injury from the fall, because you've essentially spent that destiny point to ensure that fate is twisted so that you land perfectly. So
that's the goal.
Yeah, roll a fighting check for me.
All right. And hey, just for fun, yeah, okay. So 23.
Woof. Okay, 23. That's definitely going to be Snecko's combat defense. And let me just check see what its HP is it now after taking 21 damage from a
Snickers?
bathtub.
Is this Snickers the Snick?
This is Snickers the Snack. It is now. Cool. So that was a 23 versus combat defense of 8. Yeah, you're going to do a lot of damage. I believe that's 15 damage you're going to deal in one swipe as you just smash down with your sword and shield, and you sink it almost up to the hilt in the body of this adder as it twists and writhes around.
So not enough to Neville Longbottom this thing, but
you haven't
okay.
quite. It's looking ropey. It's already taken a ton of damage from the wall itself, the gate itself, and then the bathtub. Of course.
The real subtitle of this episode: How much damage does a bathtub do?
Yeah, exactly. But it is writhing and hissing madly with kind of pain and madness. Holt and actually Gruber, can you both roll awareness checks for me?
10.
Okay. And Gruber as well, since you're on the wall, 18. Okay, Holt, again, you don't quite see it. But Gruber, you see amid the enemies that are now charging towards the splintered gate, there are actually 2 figures who are standing at the edge of the clearing, just outside of kind of arrow range. One of them is much taller. You see what looks to be a fox with scraps of beautiful white fur just kind of falling off of it and peeling off of it. And underneath is like this scrappy grey and brown fur, and it's just eyes narrowed, watching all of its subordinates just kind of charge past into the battle. By its side is a much smaller fox, like very, very petite. She looks very young as well. She is similar. It looks as if she's kind of got this beautiful white fur that's kind of just dropping off of her body. But she is wearing what looks to be like a padded, rather than armor, which the other fox is wearing. This fox is wearing more like a padded jerkin. And you see that she has these very bright, burning orange eyes. And she is just staring straight ahead, focused, her attention on the snake.
I think Holt has just witnessed Asher launch himself off the top of this battlement onto this snake when this catches his eye, and he looks over to Gruber briefly and is like, "That's him. It's that one." And he sort of starts. He probably actually tries to be as discreet as possible, and he's gonna aim an arrow.
All right, before you let fly.
I was actually going to say the exact same thing, which is that I aim an arrow.
We got one each.
All right, Gruber, I'm going to get you to go first because you have the slightly better. You got saw it first, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you want to roll a marksmanship check and tell me which one you're going for?
I'm going for the little one.
Okay. Whoo, cheese and crackers. Okay, so, bear that in mind, I want you to roll as well, just so I have both your rolls before I narrate what happens.
Marksmanship, isn't it? Okay. Right, I've got an addition of 2. Hang on, 2 speciality die.
All right. Wow. Okay. So, Gruber, you let the first arrow fly. And she is right at the edge of your range, so she does have a higher combat defense than she normally would. What's your normal arrow damage is 5, so you deal 5 damage as this arrow just. She is not focusing on it; she does not see it coming. As it just hits her straight on in the shoulder, and she instantly kind of gives this kind of yelp sound, and her eye contact with the serpent is broken. And you see her look down to her bleeding shoulder, and with this arrow from your short bow is just sticking out. And you see her ears just kind of go back. And it's not that she looks afraid; it's just that she looks completely surprised. Like she's not usually the one who gets attacked. As soon as the big fox next to her sees this, he instantly kind of steps in front of her, just Holt as your arrow would hit her. So it hits him instead. He is wearing he is essentially wearing the same amount of armor that Asher is. He is heavily armored in this dark steel and this dark pinkish red leather that connects all of these plates together. So that was a 23. How much damage would your hit do? What's your At this range, it would probably be agility.
Yeah. Then
But-
it should be, if it's 4.
4. Okay, that's tripled to 12. Because of that hit. And actually no, because again, it's right at the edge of your range, but you have a longbow, which has more range than a short bow, so I'm gonna say it's double rather than triple. As you see, the arrow finds a soft spot, doesn't sink in incredibly deep because, as I say, it was at the end of its range, but you do deal some damage to this very tall, very well-built fox in between the plates of armor, and you see him kind of snarl, grab the arrow in his fist, and just try and yank it out. Could you both roll awareness for me again, please? Oh my goodness, Gruber. Okay, Holt, you don't see this. Gruber, you see as the big fox kind of steps away from where he had like shielded the little one with his body. When he steps away, the little one has vanished. However, the big fox looks up, sees you both on battlements, and you see this kind of snarl on his face. And as the kind of as his army is charging past him and still kind of making their way into the abbey, he now joins those ranks and is kind of in this huge mass of creatures is now charging in alongside them. However, this is the point where we are going to go back to initiative order. Because the abbey is now flooding with the foe beast as they initiate fights with all of the ground troops that have been stationed there. Gruber, you can see that all of those animals you trained, along with about 80 of the Gyosim shrews, which have now all arranged themselves in amongst your platoon, are now all fighting fiercely with the enemy as they attack. The snake pauses for a moment. It seems to be confused. And then you see its eyes kind of open, and they're nowhere near as bright orange as they were before. And it starts to kind of twitch and shudder. We're going to see how it reacts. Okay. You see the fight or flight instinct kick in now that it's not being controlled. However, it seems now it's surrounded by countless creatures and it has no idea who's friend or foe. It's going into fight mode and it just starts writhing and biting and striking. Gruber, we're going to start with you at the top of the initiative. I'm going to roll for the snake, but I doubt it will roll more than you. Nah, it's going last. Okay, so Gruber, the enemy is now poured through the gates to Redwall and the fighting is breaking out in the main grounds of the Abbey. What would you like to do?
Well, what is the snake doing? He's just like going hog wild on
the snake's going hog wild, but it's also attacking the enemy. It's attacking like friend and foe.
It's attacking everyone. Well, that situation definitely seems taken care of. What's going on inside the Abbey walls? Okay,
the Abbey, inside you can see that the great doors to the Abbey have been essentially swung shut and barred. You can kind of hear that as soon as the door was busted down, the doors were closed. There are like some physicians and medics on the outside who are way back behind the fighting lines. The Gwosim and the Redwall defenders are trying to maintain a proper line to stop the enemy breaking through, but there are a lot of enemy numbers, almost overwhelming numbers.
You said as soon as the Abbey door was opened, it was swung shut?
Sorry, as soon as the gates to the outer wall were smashed open, the Abbey doors to the actual building itself closed.
Okay. I'm going to go and position myself in front, not like directly in front of the door, but near the door, and just kind of, I'm going to be taking shots with my arrows for anyone that's further away and then anyone that gets close.
Fantastic. So I'm going to say it's probably going to take your whole action to sprint across the grounds, avoiding the main battle, to put yourself in a defensive stance to protect the Abbey itself. Asher, you're currently riding a giant snake that's going hog wild.
I sure am. Okay, wild question. Please feel free to say no. Is it possible that I have my sword embedded it close enough to the head of the snake that I can direct it in a certain way, especially if it's attacking friend and foe. I can maybe at least just turn its head to make sure it's attacking our foes.
Absolutely. What I'm going to say is you can essentially roll either command or I believe I have an animal ken skill as well. Either of those to direct the snake. You won't hurt it anymore, but you will essentially, you can get it to smash into the enemy instead of your friends, or you can do an attack that will damage it.
Oh yeah, this is my vehicle now. Okay, so yeah, 18.
18. All right, that's pretty good. As you smack your way between into the enemy lines, the snake essentially crushes just under a score of kind of rats and weasels and stoats underneath as its coils are just thrashing up and down, and you direct it to the point that you essentially protect it from hurting anyone on your side.
Awesome.
And yeah, you've taken out like a line of enemies. You can see now that some of the slightly more well-trained members of the opposing army have now kind of made their way into the Abbey grounds, and they fight with a lot more skill than the kind of crazed foot shock troops that were sent to start with.
Okay.
But yes, that's what you see, and that's what you do. Next up is the bad guys. So, such as they are. The wave of the enemy army sweeps into Redwall Abbey. You can see fairly near the back is the tall, imposing figure of what you assume to be Warfare, and as you kind of get a closer look, as your snake kind of careens further into the enemy lines, you can recognize this is definitely Warfare. It's the face you remember from your kind of your visions and the memories that you got back. He is directing his troops to kind of circle around the Abbey defenders and kind of cut them off from the Abbey itself, and for some of them to kind of go past and run towards the Abbey itself. So you see about barking out orders. Some of them are going to you hear bows being knocked, and they definitely are pointing you out as a dangerous foe, Asher, as you are going to take 3 arrows that come sailing out of this crowd towards you. I'm going to see if any of them hit. First one, 20 versus your combat defense of 7. That's going to be hit. That's going to be 13 points. Is that enough? Yes. All right, so you would take 9 damage from the first one, but is that reduced to 1 or cancelled out entirely? I can't remember.
That's cancelled out entirely.
All right, so no one hits the Badger in Shining Armor aboard the Giant Viper. Next one.
He went from Hufflepuff to Slytherin.
Yeah. All right, yeah, that one's not even going to hit. It just whizzes past your ear. Neither is that one. Okay, that one does hit you, but it just dings off your breastplate. And this probably happens a few times. You just feel arrows trying to hit you, but some miraculous strike of luck, or perhaps someone is kind of lending you a paw that you can't see. These arrows just aren't finding you.
He's got his familial shield. Yeah. His ancestors are protecting him.
Exactly. And as soon as you think that, you feel this surge of courage as well. Cool. So next up, Gruber. You see that there is now a small group of very fast creatures. They look to be kind of there's quite a few weasels amongst them that are now sprinting, trying to get around the defenders and make it to the actual Abbey itself. You see maybe like 2 of these creatures succeed, and so there are now 2 weasels that have made it past the defenders by going around and are coming towards you, but they won't actually reach you this turn, but they are almost on top of you, so you can react to that on your turn. Holt, you are still on top of the wall. What would you like to do? You've lost sight of Warfare because he went underneath the gate. You can see the snake just going crazy, and that there are now creatures just fighting almost everywhere in the grounds.
I think what he's actually going to do is realizing that this huge fox basically took an arrow and kept walking. He's terrified that he's coming into the Abbey, so he's going to try to find him.
All right, so are you going to stay on top of the walls to find him?
No, he's probably, if you saw him walk under the archway, if there's either a way down via the archway, if you see what I mean, by climbing, holding on, and dropping down in front of the archway, if he hasn't seen him come through yet. But...
you saw him go underneath, but what with the madness of the snake, you're not sure. He might have come through already, or he might be still underneath. You're not sure.
He'll drop into the courtyard then, because he doesn't want to miss him.
All right, so you drop down into the courtyard. There is fighting all around you. Make a quick, I'm gonna say make a awareness check as a minor action.
I'm using advantage.
Do it.
Because I never see anything. Okay, so I'll just roll this twice. Yeah, 3. My God!
Oh dear.
Holt is never ever meant to be aware.
You think you see something and then it's gone, but you do notice a patch of kind of a scrap of white fur on the ground, and then another, which gives you a basic direction to go by, even if you can't see Wolfbear himself.
Yeah, he's going to immediately follow it.
All right, as you follow it, you are immediately faced with a very large, heavily tattooed rat that just bears down upon you and basically just gets in your way. Would you like to use your second action to essentially fight your way through?
Yeah, he's kind of just like on a line that he needs to get to this fox, so if anything, he's just going to bring his arm up and try and crash it. Like, just smack this rat.
Roll athletics check to just try and partially sidestep, partially just kind of throw it into the fighting behind you.
Oh, I didn't use my speciality dice.
Oh, better pop those in.
There we go. Still got
I'm just going to see if it resists. Okay.
Ooh, that was close.
Equal. But I'm going to go with D&D rules that meets it beats. So there's a very short wrestling match takes place in which you try and like force him out of your way and he kind of hits back towards you, but you just about manage to kind of take advantage of the uneven footing with all the bits of barricade and manage to kind of throw him into the throng of fighting next to you.
I was going to say, if I can throw him into another one, I think Holt would just pick him up and throw him into another one.
And that's basically what happens. You throw him into where another patch of creatures are fighting and knock him right into another one, which gives the shrew, who he's accosting, a good moment to jump in and stab. And you continue making your way towards him. It is now the snake's turn. The snake is aware that there is a dirty great badger on its back with a sword stuck into the base of its neck. So it is going to try and knock you off.
I am hard to miss.
I'm going to use another of my advantages, as it just thrashes and thrashes around. Could you also make a athletics check if this is contested?
All right. That's... Oh, no, hold on. That's not right.
Definitely got more than one in athletics.
Hopefully. Yeah, so...
Oh boy, yeah, you hold on, like, it's a bit like Buckaroo, but you managed to kind of, you clench tight around the handle of your blade and just resist being thrown off of this creature as it fights desperately. And that was its turn. So we're now back up to Gruber. Gruber, there are 2 weasels which are almost on top of you.
Are they still within arrow range,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
are they within melee range at this point?
Either.
I'll try and shoot them with the arrow.
All right, roll a marksmanship check for me. Oh my goodness! Wow. Yeah, that's gonna hit. In fact, that's a ridiculously good roll. So what I'm gonna say, because it's cool, you dive to the side, kind of almost like shoulder towards the ground. It's kind of slow motion. You pull back and fire, and you put yourself in the perfect position that, with the strength you put into your shot, the arrow passes through the first weasel, and then sticks the second one in the chest. And then you kind of, time catches up and you kind of hit the ground and slide a bit, and you basically look cool whatever you do, as you get up and brush yourself off. And that is your turn. Asher, it is your turn. You're still astride this giant snake. You can see where Wolfveer is. I'm going to say from up here, you can now also see Holt is making a beeline towards Wolfveer. However, you can also see that the Redwall defenders and the Gwosum shrews are slowly being overwhelmed.
All right. I don't want to leave the snake to just, go wild again. I think he's going to try to direct the snake and try to intercept Wargveer. Maybe at least just throw him off.
All right, make another either command or animal ken check.
Okay, so 20.
20, yeah, absolutely. The snake is like in so much rage and pain that it doesn't seem to kind of resist your coercion as you direct it towards Warfare, and slowly, kind of painfully makes its way towards it, squishing more of the foe underneath its coils as it does so. It is now the bad guy's turn. Warfare looks up and sees the snake coming towards him, and you see he draws from his back this huge, deadly looking halberd with this great dark steel blade, almost like an executioner's axe. And this, just as the snake is about to kind of be on top of him, he swings the halberd back behind him and comes down in this absolutely crushing blow on top of the head of the snake. The snake's gonna have slightly low combat defense. What did I give him? Where's his stuff? Okay, that is enough. The halberd plunges down on top of the snake's skull, and you just see just it sink into the skull, and there is a momentary spasm where the coils of the snake just go absolutely crazy the way they do when a snake dies. And it's all you can do to stop yourself being thrown off the beast as it dies. And you see as Warfare kind of pulls back his bloody halberd and looks up at you. You can kind of see this sharp-toothed grin as he looks at you. And roll a law check for me, or awareness. It's up to you. $19. I'm going to say that's enough. You're quite close to him. You notice something that maybe you didn't quite put together before. Where it looks like the fur is falling off of him in pieces, you realize it's actually not quite. You remember reading, and you've read about the provinces and countries and the environments all up and down from north to the south of the area. And now that you've got your full memories back, you remember that you used to be interested in the idea of traveling and what might be there in far off places. And you remember reading that far, far to the north, there are foxes which are born with pure white fur in winter, usually a little smaller than normal foxes. But you know that in warmer climates or in summer, they shed this beautiful white coat to reveal this dark grey and brown ratty coat underneath. And you recognize that it's not that his fur is falling apart, he is simply uncomfortable and shedding his winter coat in this warmer climate, and that he is an Arctic fox.
Okay.
Cool. And the rest of the army is slowly battering back the defenders of Redwall and the Gwosim Shrews. As you look around, all of you can now see there are significant numbers of fallen shrews, especially since they make up the force of your defenders. You can see Redwallers dropping back. You can see injured who are being seen to by the medics, and a line protecting the medics from harm, which are slowly being battered also by the encroaching army. Most of the army is now inside the gates of Redwall and just swarming and fighting whoever they find. Holt, you are accosted by two more rats that just leap at you in the kind of fury of the battle going on around them. An 11, the first one misses you completely with its spear as it just sails over the top of you. And the second one also misses you. It seems that maybe they're just too ramped up in a frenzy that they just miss you completely. However, we are now onto your turn, Holt. You are marching towards, you're kind of following the fallen white fur that you can see on the ground.
He's just that seems to be his beeline. He knows that in his head, if he takes out the one leading them, they're kind of a rabble. So he's trying to just beeline straight for this fox.
Absolutely. All right, yeah. So you can spend essentially one minor action, you'll get closer. Mm-hmm. However, you are going to have to spend your other minor action just kind of, again, pushing other creatures out of the way. They're going to try and stop you getting there. So if you could make an athletics check for your kind of shoving through the rave action. Oh, wow.
I added my 2 dice in there, so that's not quite.
It's still 33.
He's literally just trying to, like, half of it is his tail that he's not actually realizing. They're sort of tripping over it.
Yeah, this time there is no question about who's got the higher athleticism, as you just kind of bowling pin throw apart foes left, right, and center to make your way through to the general. All right, it is now the snake's turn. The snake is dead. The snake does not have a turn. As you finally see the coils of the snake start to settle as it becomes still and moves no more. Cross that off the list. Gruber, it is your turn. You have killed the 2 weasels that were coming for you. It doesn't seem like any more have broken through to the walls. However, you can see that some of the enemy are now accosting with a small amount of defense that is keeping the medical team safe.
Are they within range of my bow?
Absolutely, they are. Yeah.
I'm gonna start taking them out. Just pop, pop, pop.
Go for it. Roll me a marksmanship check. Oh boy, yeah, that's gonna do it. You're behind them, so you kind of can see their less armored sides, and they're not prepared to kind of defend against your shots. And with that roll, in the time it takes for all this other stuff to happen, you have already kind of slain 2 of them with expert kind of sniper shots from across the field. And that definitely seems to lighten the load on those who are kind of trying to defend the physicians who are treating the injured. Fantastic. All right, Asher, you are still on the back of the dead snake. Your sword is lodged in the neck.
I am going to see if I can dismount while retrieving my sword.
All right, you can indeed do that. I'm going to say that's one minor action to get off and drag your sword out of the corpse.
Okay. Then I will engage with Wargbeer.
All right, you move up to engage with Wargbeer. That will be your second minor action as he's a little way from you. Is that all right?
Okay.
All right, so you 2 are now facing each other down. He's just giving you this cruel smile as all around you, the defenders of Redwall are being kind of driven back and overwhelmed by sheer numbers. It is now his turn. He is going to take one almighty swing at you. Where's his degrees? There they are. Oof, that was a nasty roll. Have 2 of those don't actually count, so that is a 25. That's going to do some big damage. Okay, so remind me what your armor is again?
7. So that's over 3 times.
Okay, so you would take 15 damage.
Okay, so 6.
Yeah, 6 damage gets through as he just slashes at you with his halberd, and unlike most other weapons you've come up against recently, this has enough strength behind it, so even when it hits your armor, it doesn't exactly chop through it, but it just dents inwards enough to start like jabbing into your flesh. Mm-hmm. And he starts to like properly hammer down on your armor. And then, because you're already engaged, his second minor action, as he kind of slammed down with his halberd, he essentially keeps his paws gripping onto it tight and jumps up and tries to kick you over with his foot paws. As you feel these 2 paws just land solidly in your sternum and try to knock you over. And this is going to be a contested athletics check. All right, so
I am going to use an advantage.
I thought you might.
Yeah.
All right, you can still make that go up to a 19. which is actually a little bit better, because he kicks you in the chest and you stumble back and you take a knee, but you don't go fully down. Because you have already used quite a lot of energy. You're probably a little bit out of breath from riding a giant snake. So he manages to exploit that moment of weakness to kind of kick you down to your knees. However, that's the end of his turn. The enemy are they're fighting hard. They're fighting tooth and nail. They're sensing that victory might be close as they swarm the defenders. But all of you have been picking them off very expertly and kind of slowing down the process. But sheer weight of numbers is kind of helping them take the day. However, it is Holt's turn now. Holt, you can now see Walkveer, and you can see him kind of glaring down at your good friend Asher. Now, Walkveer is about the same height as Asher. He's a lot less heavily built, and so doesn't pack quite such like a meaty silhouette, but he's a big creature.
Okay, I think Holt sees this thing standing over his friend, and he breaks into almost like a rugby tackle, like a sprint, and realizing that he's tall but not stout, he's going straight for the legs to all sort of take him out away from his friend to be able to try and get on top of him, because the only thing that Holt has is basically his upper body strength and his arms, so he wants to get on top of this guy.
Absolutely. We're going to do another contested athletics check.
Okay. Let's have a look. I'll read my 2 specialty down. 6. I'm also going to use one of my advantages because I kind of want him off my friend.
Fantastic. Oof, yeah.
42, there
oh my god, that's insane. Yes. You rugby tackle him around the legs and you both go flying. Like the power of your leap, maybe even you didn't expect it to be quite so crazy. You just end up going like head over tail, both of you. Him in his heavy armor, which is substantially less comfortable than you in your lighter armor. And he is now prone and at least a minor action's distance away from your friend.
Yeah, he did it literally just to try and take him out, and he's trying to just stay on top of him.
Yeah, trying to grapple him down.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're up to top with Gruber. Gruber, roll an awareness check before you take your turn for me.
All right. It's a 12.
12. Okay, that's enough. You hear, and I imagine that the rest of you probably hear it as well, but maybe aren't really focusing on anything else you hear right now other than the immediate battle you're engaged in. Gruber, okay. You hear the sound of a war horn. And this time it's very different to the low war horn that heralded the arrival of the enemy army. This is a high, clear sound that just kind of rings through the air around you. And you can see there are animals up on the walls, those who are fighting, but mostly those archers who are still trying to cling to their high positions. They are pointing and hollering and waving down towards the outside of the walls. And as they do this, you hear the twin bells of Matthias and Methuselah, the big Redwall Abbey bells. They start to toll again, and you hear a cheer go up on the walls.
Okay, I'm gonna look to the walls. Can I see what's going on?
You can't quite see from here because at the moment you're still down on the ground, so you can't see what's happening on the other side.
But there's still like, sorry, haven't had coffee yet today. There's still fighting going on inside.
Oh yeah, there's still plenty of fighting going on.
Well, then whatever they're cheering about is not very
No, that's fair. What would you like to do?
How far away am I from the next group of baddies?
There is a huge clump of them in the center, like on the center, and this big cloud around where the gate is, which is where most of the fighting seems to take place. Mm-hmm. And you can see that, again, most of the Redwall and the Shrews are now being overwhelmed and being forced back. So they will soon be, like, the lines of your own companions are within range. So if you went up to join those lines, you would be able to kind of take pot shots at the enemy as they follow.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll join the line.
Okay. All right. So you can use a minor action to join the line. Would you like to take a shot as well?
Yeah. Can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah, you kind of help with the retreat of the line that's kind of moving back to the defensive position, and as it's retreating, you fire off a few shots and manage to take down a few more of the enemies as they're kind of running after them to try and kind of intercept the retreat. So you're just you're everywhere at once. You kind of dash from place to place, taking shots and stopping the enemy from advancing as quick as they otherwise would. Meanwhile, Asher, you heard this cheer and the bells beginning to toll again, and you see weasels and rats and stoats now looking up and towards the gates, and you see the ones closest to the gates almost kind of yelping in shock and fear, and then they're starting to run further into Redwall as kind of one solid column of long patrol hares kind of burst through in a column formation into the back kind of the back side of the enemy army, and just punch a hole right down the middle of them. Many of the hares in the kind of the vanguard are armed with these long pikes, and at their head you recognize your mother. Hilda is dressed in full plate armor and the silver and blue velvet, and she is whirling her warhammer, and she just kind of launches into the battle itself. As the hares now spread out, and they are incredibly disciplined. They have perfect formation, as you see kind of two fans of incredibly long pikes just slowly, one step at a time, pressing the enemy back. And then over their heads, you see stones start to fly over their heads, and you see the whirling slings of a large troop of otters directly behind them, using the pikes as defense to hurl projectiles over at the enemy in front of them. And you're not the only one that sees this. All of the defenders now, all of you within the Abbey itself, can see now this is happening, and there is a resounding cheer that goes up that just kind of melds into the sound of the twin bells tolling. And you hear kind of shrieks and shouts from the enemy as they realize what's happening. And Asher, you see that Wargvir has now also noticed this and is kind of frowning and kind of snarling. And he doesn't look like he plans to stick around. It is your turn.
I think he's going to look to Wargvir and go, "What's wrong, Chuckles? You're not smiling anymore." And he's definitely injured. Did Holt knock Wargvir to the ground, or has
Yes, Holt did knock Wargvir down. Wargvir is prone right now.
Okay. I think what I would like to do is use my second to last destiny point, and I would like to attempt to disarm Wargvir, literally, if necessary.
All right, so you use. What I'm going to say is this kind of gives you this as a free extra action, because it takes you a minor to get back to your feet and a minor to get over there, and now you can attempt to disarm. So that will be a fighting check. Oof, yeah. You successfully, you kind of, you slash your sword down, and you cut across where the fingers would be kind of holding on to the halberd. He instinctively kind of drags them back before you essentially would have cut his hands off, and the halberd is left on the ground, he has essentially dropped it. Cool. Nice. It is now the bad guy's turn. Wargvir is going to he wriggles out of this sprawl of himself and Holt. He looks for a moment like he is going to try and pick up the halberd, decides against it, and he makes a run for the gate. and you can see him. He almost drops down to all fours to just sprint towards the gate. However, his path is blocked by the Lady of Salamanderstron, who is standing in his way with the Warhammer. And you can see the two of them start not trading blows because he's been disarmed of his main weapon, but he is now just desperately trying to dodge her attacks with the Warhammer. And that's what he's doing. The rest of the army it's trying to reform. It's trying to reform and face back at this huge amount of reinforcements that you just received. There are a lot of long patrol hairs. It seems like at least 70% of the fighting force of Salamanderstron has marched across Mossflower to turn up to this fight. And the otters are all drawn together by the skipper, which, Holt, you see your brother is kind of leading them, and he is whirling a loaded sling above his head, just firing off stone after stone. And his aim is second to none, and you know this because you knew how good he was at using a sling when you were younger. And the other otters by his side are also flinging stones everywhere they can see. And the enemy, which seemed to be doing so triumphant before, is now starting to crumble. However, seeing their master starting to run, some of them also start to run, trying to take out anything on their way past. Holt, a very large looking stoat, takes a swing at you since it sees you kind of on the ground after your kind of like rugby tackle. Oh my god, what a terrible roll. A 13 just hits you, doesn't it? Alright, you would take, this guy's got a much higher, well, not much higher, but you would take 5 damage, 3 absorbed by your armor, as you are struck by essentially another, a longsword. This seems to be one of Wargvir's more elite kind of guardsmen than the most of the rabble you've been fighting. And from up behind you, Asher, another one of these weasels is going to take a stab with a long pike as it just tries to stop you from following their master. That's a bit better. That's going to hit, but I don't think it's going to do enough damage. It would do, that would be a 10 damage, but I think you only take 1?
Yes.
Okay, as it just finds a chink in your armor to deal some damage, but doesn't do anything enough to really make you uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Gruber, you have joined the main fighting force. You're taking pot shots at enemies left, right, and center, defending those behind you. However, this has left you a little bit more exposed, and you hear kind of the whistle of an answering arrow firing in your direction. Does a 16 hit you? What's your combat defense?
My combat defense is 9.
9, okay, that's going to hit you for double damage, so you would take 6 points.
I think my armor absorbs 2 of that.
Okay, cool. So you only take 4 points as an arrow kind of lodges itself. Doesn't go too deep, but you kind of feel it pierce into your thigh. And as that happens, one of the kind of the vanguard of the beasts that hasn't run yet, that is trying to kind of chase down the survivors, is going to come at you with a short sword. Okay, that will hit you, but only for, that's only going to hit you for 4 damage, so you would absorb 2 and just take 2 damage.
So 4 total.
Yeah, 4 total. As you kind of are now almost on your own, kind of fending off a lot of these enemies, kind of single-pawed, as it were. And that's the end of their turn. Holt, it is your turn. You can see Wargvir and Hilda are exchanging blows, and Wargvir seems to have whipped out from underneath his cloak a very nasty-looking dark steel short sword, and is just doing his best to parry her blows. And he's looking worse for wear. He is limping. He's kind of the arm he's using to strike with the blade looks already like it's been damaged. He's kind of holding it weirdly. And he looks like he's in a bit of a bad way. He is, however, a full turn's run away from you.
There we go. What I think Holt does is probably gets up as he's just been hit. I think the stoke probably knocked his already still injured shoulder a bit, and he's got his ear that's bleeding. down the side. And he sort of tries to steady himself, and I think maybe the pain is giving him like a really bad headache on one side. So he closes one eye so that he can focus better with the other, and pulls out his bow and arrow and just takes a deep breath in and releases it again and lets loose an arrow, trying to aim either for like the shoulder bit, like where he's holding up his sword, or if that doesn't work, somewhere else.
All right, he's gonna have a little bit extra like cover protection because there's a lot of bodies between you and him. But roll marksmanship for me.
Okay, and I'm also going to use an advantage.
Go for
as
it.
well. So where is my marksmanship? I've also got 2 speciality dice in this. So rip, I'm definitely rolling again. Wow.
All right, you are going to hit, but it's just going to do your base damage, which I think is... What's your base damage with the bow?
Damage.
Like 7 or something?
It's 7 plus 2, apparently.
Oh, wow, 9. All right. This is a bad blow for Warfare. However, you aren't able to quite catch the sword arm. You, similarly to Gruber, actually, you strike him in the thigh, and you hear this immediate kind of shriek, that very kind of off-putting shriek that only foxes can make, as he kind of starts limping harder, and you hear this kind of snarl building up in the back of his throat. Meanwhile, on the other side of the field, Gruber, we are back to you. You are currently surrounded by kind of sort of goons, as it were, but they are now kind of within engagement range of you.
Are they within melee range or just?
They are. They are all basically surrounding you to the point that firing your bow might be a little bit too slow in order to kind of protect yourself.
Okay. Well, even though then I have really no ability to... I have no athletics, I'm going to take out my special ruby sword. And I'm going to start chopping.
All right. Roll a fighting check with 2 extra d6s.
Okay. Oops. Wrong chat.
All right.
With a 9.
With a 9, you catch the one nearest you, this burly-looking stoat, and you kind of open like a gash with this beautiful silvery ruby sword across its sternum. And as soon as it sees the blade and its companions see the blade, there is this widening of eyes and this instant fear instilled into all of them. And you hear, like, behind them, one of them kind of shouts something, and then they all, they kind of see the blade and look up at you, and then they start backing off, looking terrified. They seem to recognize this blade.
Okay.
And you have another minor action.
I'm just gonna hold my sword in a ready position.
Okay. You kind of hold the sword out, and you kind of feel this kind of confidence and this determination just flowing through you just by holding this sword. And the enemies in front of you are just kind of cowering slightly and seem to have lost a lot of their bravado. And this just kind of adds to the fact that they are now the outnumbered party, and they seem to be starting to rout. The enemy, some of the ones near the gate have already tried to make a dash for it through the gates and evade the hares that are now running anything through that gets too close. Asher, at the start of your turn, you are essentially what did you do on your last turn? Remind me.
That's when I disarmed Warfare.
Right, so you turn with your blade as Warfare kind of slips away and is now kind of, you can see him fighting with your mother. You see the arrow from the longbow from Holt kind of pierces into his thigh, and he kind of gives this horrible shriek, and then almost too deft for the amount of injured he looked, he rolls to one side and stabs upwards, aiming under the breastplate of your of Hilda with the short sword. And you realize that the weakness he was displaying in his sword arm was clearly a ruse to catch her off guard. Okay. You see, as the blade sinks deep underneath this this kind of breastplate, and she kind of gasps, and he just leaves it there and tries to run. It is your turn.
Okay. I think that's enough to trigger a blood wrath. I think that's fair. So he's a full turn away from me, though, isn't he?
He's a full turn away. However, you can make a charge attack, which combines one attack with your movement. Sacrifices a bit of accuracy, but ups your damage.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So what would that be? My fighting is 5, so with the charge I lose 2?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably not gonna hit. Is it possible to use my last destiny point to negate the 2?
Yeah, that's a good use of it.
Okay.
Are you spending it or burning it? Because if you decide to burn it and get rid of it permanently, you can create a much bigger effect. And this is the finale.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and spend it permanently.
All right. Go for it. So with that, I'm gonna say you gain like this burst of ferocity from seeing him basically like properly stab into the abdomen of your mother, and that's gonna give you so if you said that you just re-rolled there.
Right. So yeah, 22 would be
amazing. That's enough. You Juggernaut just careen into him sword first. And let me just check his combat defense. It is not much, because he's wearing heavy armor. What is your damage tripled?
It's 5. So 15.
Okay, he absorbs. He's going to absorb 8 of that with his armor, but he still takes a hefty 7. He is genuinely looking very rough now. Almost kind of about to drop. He is desperately trying to claw his way away from you, and you hear him kind of hissing about the his sister being displeased, and there's as much fear in his voice about that than there is about the giant badger towering over him. It is now the bad guy's turn. He is gonna just crawl towards the gates. He is not going to attack anyone. He has left his sword behind. He's been disarmed. He's just trying to escape, but he is not doing it very fast because he is so badly wounded. Meanwhile,
there's no such thing as attack of advantage or anything like that.
No, there's not really opportunity attacks in the system.
That's
right. Meanwhile, the rest of the army is now routing for sure. They saw this enormous badger lord just smash straight into their commander, and the news that Orkvir is trying to flee spreads like a wildfire. Everywhere, the Phobeast is starting to break ranks and run. Many of them are cut down on their way out, trying to get to the gate because the hares have fallen back into a defensive position and are just slaying anything that gets close. But yeah, they're not in the mood to attack anyone right now. Even the ones that were engaged with you before, Holt and Gruber, and also Asher, they break ranks. Especially Gruber, the ones that you are facing down, take one more look at that sword, just break ranks and sprint away from you. It is now Holt's turn. Holt, you just pinned Wargveer in the thigh. You see him kind of drop down under the assault of Asher's blade, and he is now desperately trying to claw his way to the gate.
He's just going to take another arrow.
You're just going to Boromir him, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to just keep on. I'm going to, make him look like one of the hedgehogs. Am I rolling a marksmanship for that?
Yes, you are.
So I've also got an additional 2 dice. 21.
All right, yeah, 21's going to do it. As you take that moment of stillness to stop and fire, Asher, you feel this arrow streak past you like a hairbreadth from your nose, and the wind on it as it passes you, and it just hits Wargveer in the back of the neck, at that point where the neck kind of connects to the top of the back, and he just goes down face forward. And as soon as the rest of the enemies see this, they're just screaming and running, and it doesn't take long for the ones that aren't quick enough to be cut down. Some of them manage to make it through the gates, most of them do not. And with that, the siege of Redwall was over. And there was a moment of calm, and a moment as you try and kind of collect what's happened all around you. Asher, you see your mother has taken a knee and is being kind of helped to lie down by some of the other hares. Gruber, you can see behind you that the group of medics, this includes Anastasia, who is helping Sister Cecily, are quickly bringing in the wounded, and they're just prioritizing treating everyone who's been hurt. Holt, your brother comes and finds you and smacks you on the back and just gives you the tightest of hugs, and just he kind of looks at your ear and has a bit of a chuckle with you about it. And what would you all like to do as this kind of the heat of the battle starts to calm around you?
I'm going to be performing as much field medicine as I can on my mother.
Absolutely. Roll a healing check for me. Between you and the hares, you are able to kind of remove her armor to make it a bit easier to perform medicine.
Okay, so yeah, the 2 3s will replace the 1 and the 2.
All right.
So 12.
All right.
Still?
So yeah, that's fine. That's what you needed. She heals 3 points. So essentially, she has now been stabilized. She's not bleeding out, but she did take quite a hefty wound, and the aftermath of the battle is sobering for many. There were a lot of comrades that were lost. The log of the Grossing Shrews fell in battle, and that evening there is a procession of shrews, and some of the otters join in as well, and those who fought alongside Logolog and the other shrews join them on a procession that takes the body of the old Logolog to the riverside, about an hour's walk from the abbey, and they give him a proper Viking-style burial as they watch his very serene body float down the River Moss. Meanwhile, the abbey is busy, as it always is, patching up those who were injured, and a few days passed, and the abbey starts to return to normal. The small fox, she was never found. No one knows what happened to her, whether she joined the fray or whether she fled early on. But it seems like the army of Wargveer was soundly destroyed, and any remnants of it fled into Mossflower alone to face the dangers of the woods without backup. Asher, your mother was grievously injured. It's not safe to move her until the wound is healed, and this will take some time. This means that for now, the fortress of Salamanderstrom is left without a Badger Lord, and the hares approach you, and they ask if you would join them at Salamanderstrom to protect it whilst Lady Hilda heals at Redwall, as the healers and medics at Redwall are superior to those at the mountain with their access to forest herbs. And they kind of leave you with this choice as to whether you stay with your friends or take up the mantle of your lordship. Not permanently, but it will take some months potentially until your mother is strong enough to regain her duties.
Okay. Yeah, I think taking the seat of Salamandastron is what he was born to. I mean, regardless, at some point, the inevitability is that he will sit there. Yeah, I think he'll ensure that his mother has the best of care, and gather his stuff and go to Salamandra. Not without goodbyes, of course.
Oh, of course. There are goodbyes. In fact, we go forward to a few days later, where you're standing at the gates of Redwall. Anastasia, Gruber, Holt, you all stand at nearby, kind of saying your goodbyes to Asher as he is about to depart on his journey back to Salamanderstrom. What do you all do?
I think Holt's in heavy bandages, and he doesn't really say anything. He gives him a hug and a pat on the back, but otherwise he sort of just salutes him as he goes.
Oh, it's a good hug. It's a big boy hug.
He's like, ow! So he goes in with the shoulder, but he does hug.
Yeah, you better be careful. You're not observant anyway. Now you're down half an ear. You better be.
What?
Yeah, as you jostle your wound dressings, your sister, who's kind of keeping an eye on you, like slaps you on the rump with a ladle and goes, "Oi! Don't make me redress that for like the 5th time this morning."
Yeah, and he just sort of does that half sigh, half. Yep. No, I got that.
Oh, you've been one of the best friends a badger could ever have, and nothing is permanent. We'll see each other again, and you're always welcome at Salamanderstrom. And you have a title now too, Slayer of the Frost Fox.
And he sort of smiles at, didn't think of that. Thanks, mate. Maybe I will come visit.
I hope you do.
I will. And he gives him another slap on the back before backing away from his sister a little bit.
Is Gruber there as well?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. Gruber, you are honestly terrifying. No, please.
No, go on. Say what you're gonna say.
You are terrifying, and I fear and admire you in equal amounts. I hope that you don't kill me someday, and I hope that more than anything we're friends. And at that point, he's going to notice the sword that I'm sure is still on Gruber's hip. He's going to go, "Where did you find that? Do you know what that is?"
Yeah, a strange mouse came into my room and hid it in my closet while I was sleeping.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And I figured if they left it in there, then that means I guess I should use it.
Absolutely. I have never known anyone that deserved it more. And Asher knows that that's rat death. You know, he's seen the tapestry a ton. And yeah, I hope it brings nothing to you but victory. And my biggest regret is that I never got to throw you at something.
Well, I'm sure there will be time for that in the future.
One can only hope. And he will give Gruber a cautious hug, looking out for the murder knife.
You feel my little murder knife. Like
I feel the murder knife.
And I go, sorry, and I rearrange it, and I return the hug.
It's exactly where I didn't expect it. Okay.
Anastasia gives you a long hug as well, and promises that absolutely the lady of Redwall, Lady Anastasia, will most certainly have to pay some visits to Salamanderstrom, if not just to sample your fantastic fabrics.
Of course, and your room shall always be ready for you, my lady.
You see that she's trying to make it look like she's not tearing up.
And I think with that, he's going to take whatever small retinue of the long patrol is still there.
Yeah, some of them stayed behind. Some of them went straight back to kind of make sure Salamanderstrom was defended. But you have a little platoon with you that will salute smartly.
And before he walks, he's going to turn around and he's going to take his shield off of his arm and hand it to the abbot. And say, "This is so I come back, and this is so I make sure that Redwall always has the shield of the protector."
The abbot nods and smiles, and he certainly looks like he's aged a bit. You've had to bury a few creatures that lived at Redwall, and it's taken a toll on everyone. But
Absolutely.
He looks sincerely grateful at you and smiles. Not to fear, brave Badger Lord. I do not know whether I will have a chance to see you again before my seasons have run their course, but you will always be remembered in story and in song. And after all, and he kind of gives a little side eye to Gruber, who still has Martin's sword, which he hadn't really noticed until you pointed it out underneath Gruber's cloak. It looks like we have an interim protector of the Abbey until you get back.
You're in good paws. And I think that's it for Asher. He's going to begin his walk towards the setting sun, if that's even the direct. No, that's not the direction of Salamander's run. No, he'll have to make a couple turns in between. He doesn't have Gruber leading him.
No, it doesn't. It might take you a while to get back. So as we pan away from Redwall Abbey, we see flurry of activity in the kitchens as Holt, your younger sister, and your father are helping Anastasia's parents preparing a fine meal and a feast to celebrate the start of the winter season and long months of coziness and storytelling and just making the most of everything that you have. And you are all welcome to stay. What do you do? Let's have a little tiny epilogue for each of you now that winter has fully taken hold of Mossflower Woods. Gruber, how do we find you a little while later, now that you have kind of taken up the interim champion of Redwall position with Martin's blade kept at your side?
I definitely implement a thrice weekly training regimen for anyone who's interested, where we go into the woods and practice fighting, and then also practice like tasting the dirt to see which direction the sun has risen in, and licking the leaves to figure out when the wind was blowing and in what direction and that sort of thing. But I also try and learn the skills that my parents have that I perhaps felt myself too good to learn when I was younger. So I try and help in doing the yard work around the Abbey as much as I can.
And do you find that you almost have a fan club of the young creatures and the Dibbons who almost kind of raise you up as like a kind of a symbol of resistance and fun and strength, as your classes are particularly popular amongst the youngest creatures who don't tend to take them very seriously, but they love you all the more for it. Holt, where do we find you?
Holt spends a lot of his days either swimming and helping out with the swimming classes as his dad gets older. He's constantly in the kitchen and having his hands slapped away by his sister as he tries to swipe things on the way through.
Yep.
But otherwise, when he's doing archery, because I think there's been so much damage to his shoulder, he goes out later at night and just tries to train over and over again to build up that strength again.
Fantastic. And you are, again, frequently involved with the underwater assault section of Gruber's classes. Whether you kind of want to be or not, you're kind of dragged into it. And yeah, you just kind of have some very peaceful seasons back at Redwall. Asher, where do we find you?
I think as the months go by, Asher's mother finds more and more health coming back to her, and eventually she is able to make it back to Salamandastron. And there's one wintry day where he's going through the forest. He's using what memory he has of the of how he got there in the first. Well, not in the first place, but in the first place since he lost his memory. With his, again, a small retinue of hares, and he hears just over the horizon the twin bells ringing, and he knows he's going home.
Fantastic. And I can't think of a better place to round up this story. So I'm sorry we ran on a little late, but I'm so grateful for everyone that came along to listen to this tale, and for my wonderful, wonderful players for making it so much richer. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the tale of the heroes of Redwall. Indeed, as we close the book on this final chapter, I think we had a pretty happy ending.
We did. We did have a happy ending. Thank you so much, Rachel. This has been amazing. Everyone, we would like to hear what you think in the Discord. There is a channel just for this, and we'd love to see what you think about this amazing story, this wonderful game and characters. I'd also please see the links to the YouTube if you've missed anything or want to catch up. That's where you can find it. And a huge, huge thank you to our wonderful sponsors in the form of the Deck of Many, where you can check out Humblewood, and also Mage Hand Press, where you can check out Dark Matter. Other than that, we'll see you later for another finale, but this has been amazing, and I'll see everyone later. Keep evoking emotions. Bye.
Bye.